Brookline Select Board, and this is the regular meeting of the Select Board for September 16, 2025. First order of business is I move that the Select Board go into executive session for the purpose of discussing strategy related to a litigation matter described in item 2A of your agenda. Litigation matter must be discussed in executive session because an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigation position of the town, and the chair so declares an executive session therefore to be necessary. So all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Aye.
Mike Rubenstein.
Aye.
Sorry. And chair votes aye. The select board will reconvene after our executive session. Thank you. Good evening. I'm Bernard Green, Chair of the Brookline Select Board, and this is the regular meeting of the Select Board for September 16, 2025. Let's start off with comments, announcements from the Select Board. I have two um, announcements, and then Michael Rubenstein has an important message with respect to the Office of Emergency Management. And I'm looking for something I need to read. Oh, here it is. Okay. So item 13 on the agenda, at the request of one of the select board members, will be taken off, and we'll deal with that at a later date. The term of the applicant that was the subject of that item ends in November, so we'll defer this action until then. Second, I'm going to read a resolution of the select board expressing our appreciation to Susan Rack, who for more than 50 years in Brookline has been a civic leader in the Brookline Rotary Club and many other activities. I'm going to read the resolution and we will vote on it next week because I failed to get it on the agenda in time. The Rotary is holding a celebration for Susan on Thursday, where I will also read it. So, select board members, listen, we're going to be voting on this next week. So, resolution of the Select Board expressing its appreciation to Susan Rack for her many years of service to the Brookline community as a member and leader of the Brookline Rotary Club. Whereas the Select Board rightfully honors those Brookline residents whose civic work and leadership has enhanced the lives of people in our community and people across the globe, and whereas Susan Rack has been a longtime resident of Brookline and a hardworking member and leader of the Brookline Rotary Club and an active community volunteer. And whereas Susan Rack, whose hometown is Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, came to Boston in 1969 when she completed her training in physical therapy at the University of Pennsylvania and moved to Brookline in 1973. And whereas Susan Rack joined the Brookline Rotary Club in 2006 while serving as the executive director of Goddard House. And whereas Susan Rack took leadership of many civic initiatives of the Brookline Rotary Club, including the pancake breakfast, spaghetti dinner, dog day, providing school supplies for low-income students in the Brookline schools, organizing a winter coat drive for the Eastern Service Workers Union, gathering Christmas gifts to children identified by the Brookline Community Center, and many other initiatives. Where Susan Rack took leadership in obtaining grants from various Rotary grant programs for local and global initiatives. And whereas Susan Rack's leadership resulted in grants to the Teen Center that resulted in the acquisition of its 3D printer, a healthy eating program in partnership with Boston University that provided meals and healthy cooking skills to low-income youth, grants to the Brookline Housing Authority to acquire computers for residents and computer classes, and grants to Women Thriving that developed a community edible plants garden. And whereas Susan Rack used her position as Rotary Service Chair to connect with community leaders, local nonprofits, and Rotarians in the local district to increase the scope and value of her work here in Brookline. And whereas Susan Rack served as president of the Brookline Rotary Club in 2016 and worked with Bo Winokur to produce a concert and obtain scholarships to raise seed money for the Scholarship Fund for Brookline High School graduates held by the Brookline Community Foundation. It's almost over. Whereas Susan Rack used the resources of the various Rotary International grant programs to work with local Rotarians in Nepal, in India, and in Kenya on projects that helped rebuild a school in Nepal following an earthquake, dispense oral polio vaccines in poor Indian villages, and participated in obtaining grants for Rotary International Sustainable Water, Sanitation, and Hygiene Initiative in Kenya. And whereas after over 50 years as an impactful and valued resident of Brookline, Susan Rack is returning to her hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And whereas on September 18, 2025, the Brookline Rotary Club will have a very special evening with dinner, music, and a program celebrating Susan Rack's 20 years of service, a lifetime of impact 20 years with the Rotary. Now, therefore, in consideration of the foregoing, on this 16th day of September 2025, the Select Board of the Town of Brookline, Massachusetts, on behalf of the residents of Brookline and with great appreciation for her contributions to Brookline over the years, hereby acknowledges the valuable service Susan Rack gave to the residents of Brookline and expresses our sincere appreciation and thanks to Susan Rack for all that she has done and wishes her all the best on her return to her hometown of Pittsburgh. Thank you. Okay. So, every once in a while, we hear of a community leader, community business person, or someone else who needs to be recognized by the select board, and we've done that on a number of occasions. And people who are the recipients of this resolution or proclamation really appreciate the fact that the community recognizes the work that they do as volunteers to help our community. So, next, Michael, you have a message you want to give us?
Yes, and this comes from the from the Department of Emergency Management, and I want to thank Cheryl Ann Snyder, the Deputy Director of that office, for her important words. September is National Emergency Preparedness Month, and the Office of Emergency Management wants to make sure that all residents have the tools to protect themselves and their families. Our motto is be ready, be safe, be informed. And here are two simple ways you can prepare for an emergency. First is Alert Brookline. In an emergency, timely information is critical. Alert Brookline is the town's official mass notification system designed to send you important alerts about severe weather, snow emergency, parking bans, boil water orders, and other public safety issues. Messages can be sent via phone, text, and email, and you can request to receive the messages in the language of your choice. It also provides an option for non-emergency notifications regarding elections and town events. For more information and to sign up, visit www.brooklinema.gov/alert. The second is Smart 911. When you call 911, first responders are working with limited information. If you call from a cell phone, dispatchers won't even have your address. Smart 911 is a free and secure service that allows you to create a safety profile for your household. You can include critical details like medical conditions, allergies, and emergency contacts. This information is immediately and only available to dispatchers and first responders if you ever need to call 911, helping them assist you more quickly and effectively. Visit www.brooklinema.gov/smart911 for more info and to sign up you and your household for this service, because seconds matter in an emergency. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Any other announcements, John?
Thanks very much. I want to highlight an event that's coming up Thursday, and that's Thursday of this week, the September 18th. At 5 to 7 p.m., there is going to be the annual meeting and reception of something known as Brookline Can. And that's all one word, Brookline followed by C-A-N, Brookline Can. Brookline Can is an extraordinary organization, and the roots of it are very much tied to Frank and Carol Carroll. Frank Carroll, lamentably, passed away a few years ago. Carol carries on in his tradition, but she's always been involved, as Frank was from the beginning, with both the Senior Center in Brookline, many innovative programs, essential programs for senior adults. And Brookline Can is a volunteer organization that, almost in parallel with the Senior Center itself, does a lot of work to support activities for seniors and to represent the interests of seniors in Brookline. So Thursday, it's a good opportunity to celebrate 15 years of Brookline Can. And it's going to be at the senior center, and those who wish to be there for the celebration and to pay tribute to the memory of Frank and to the ongoing work of Carol and others, should think about attending. And if they do want to attend, they should RSVP by going to the organization's website, Brookline Can, all one word, Brookline CAN.
Thank you. Any other announcements from the select board? Okay, let's move on to our public comment segment. Tiffany, you want to lay out the rules?
Yes. Thank you for joining us for public comment. This is an opportunity for us to hear your perspective on the issues in Brookline that matter to you. Each person speaking tonight is limited to 3 minutes. You don't need to use the entire time, but you may if you'd like. Once 15 minutes has been met, there is an opportunity at the conclusion of the select board's business for additional comments. Members of the public sometimes raise questions during public comment. We may be able to provide a quick answer to a question, but are more likely to work with staff to get a more thorough answer and respond over email. The on-screen timer will flash orange when you have 30 seconds remaining and red when your time is up. Please conclude your remarks at that time. If you have more to say, you're welcome to send an email to board members expressing your thoughts in greater detail. Any person speaking should begin their comment by identifying themselves with their full name and either their Brookline precinct number or street address. The first individual who signed up in advance to speak during public comment is Neil Gordon.
Thank you, Tiffany. Good evening. Neil Gordon, Precinct 1 Town Meeting member and a member of the Advisory Committee. Quoting from the Diversity Commission's charge for Brookline's general bylaw, words written by the current Select Board Chair. The foundation of community is strong and positive community relations among and between all groups and individuals in the community. In January 2024, I addressed the Diversity Commission regarding the impact that events in the Middle East were having on our community. I cited a report by Brookline News that in the wake of on-campus anti-Semitism, Jewish high school students in Brookline were reconsidering their college choices. Harvard University had reported a significant drop in early admission applications. And in that context, a member of the Diversity Commission stated on social media, I think Harvard will be just fine for high-quality candidates, more room for Asians. In response, the commission said nothing, did nothing, and was nothing. As you consider the future composition of the Diversity Commission, consider this. The commission is charged with supporting a welcoming environment by encouraging cooperation, tolerance, and respect for all. It's charged with actively pursuing goals of inclusion. I've heard references to First Amendment rights, and that may be on the minds of some of you. But there's no constitutional right to appointment or reappointment to a town board, committee, or commission. One last thought. If there was one word that I might use to describe the Diversity Commission in its current form, it would be this: dysfunctional. As the commission's sole appointing authority, I leave it to you, the select board, to determine an appropriate first step toward building a commission capable of executing its charge. As always, I thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Richard Murphy.
Thank you, Tiffany. Hi, my name is Richard Murphy, Precinct 16. I'm here to support the agenda item 5E, Puttingham Woods funding. A story about Emma Cummings. In 1885, the Brookline Tree Planting Committee was formed, and it was the first in the state of Massachusetts. The tree committee at that time would plant an average of about 195 trees per year. By 1899, there were 6,500 trees recorded in a population of the town of Brookline of 16,000. Even in 1898, Boston Mayor Quincy followed the same structure of establishing a tree planting committee for Boston. The town's first tree nursery was established in a spot which we know today to be the Devotion School. By the turn of the 20th century, the nursery was moved to Puttingham Woods. By the 20th century, by 1920s, the tree nursery inventory was moved to private nurseries. During the planning of the construction of Puttingham Meadows Golf Course in the 1920s, Puttingham Woods was an area preserved for preservation. Emma Cummings was appointed and remained a member of the Brookline Tree Plant Committee from 1902 to 1939. She was the first woman to hold a town office position in Brookline and was appointed a member of by being appointed a member of the Tree Planting Committee. In 1901, she published The Trees of Our Neighborhoods, a lecture she delivered before the Massachusetts Horticultural Society. Her talks focused mainly on the trees of Brookline. Emma was known as a 20th century woman. In 1938, she published the book of the Tree Committee's history and notable trees in Brookline, called Brookline Trees. Her book was praised by the Boston Globe and the Boston Herald, used by teachers and schools. By 1938, Emma Cummings had recorded 95 miles of street trees with an inventory of 14,000. In 1940, the town had made a dedication stone at Puttingham Woods in Emma's honor. Today, that dedication stone still rests aside at Puttingham Woods. I'd like to be able to thank Aaron Shu and Justin Lawson. Aaron, over the years, as far as support, as far as moving this project forward, we're revitalizing the Puttingham Woods, and Justin is basically bringing it across the finish line with this additional funding, in which we would be able to have an educational area for our youth to learn about nature and be able to walk the paths that the bird sanctuary provides at Puttingham Woods. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the individuals who signed up in advance of the meeting for public comment. Are there any other individuals online who wish to speak at this time? If so, please raise your hand using the raise the hand feature, or if in the room, please make your presence known. I do see Carlos Redruejo is online. I'm promoting you now.
Thank you, Tiffany. I wanted to speak on behalf of preserving, or at least considering further thought on the pin oak tree.
Carlos, if you
Yes.
could hold your comment on that item till the public hearing, this is
I will
just
do
for
that.
other items. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak during public comment at this time? Okay, there are a number of individuals in the room and 36 online, and no one else is indicating their desire to speak.
Okay, thank you, Tiffany. Okay, next, miscellaneous items. First, approval of the meeting minutes from September 9, 2025. Anyone have any corrections or edits to those minutes? Okay, then I move approval of the minutes from September 9, 2025. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Aye.
Michael Rubenstein.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Next, I'd like to take items 5B through 5M in omnibus fashion, unless anyone wants to pull one of them out for further discussion. Okay, then I move items 5B through 5M in the miscellaneous calendar. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David, pardon me? Aye.
said aye.
Okay.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Aye.
Michael Rubenstein.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Okay, moving on to our main calendar. Boards and commissions interviews. First item is a candidate for the Brookline Commission on Women, Melissa Mukin. Is she in the?
Melissa's online. Melissa, you've been promoted.
Hello.
Good evening. Okay, introduce yourself and tell us why you would like to be on the Commission for Women.
I apologize for the car. I have to wait for my daughter, but my name is Melissa Mukin. I live in Brookline, and I would love to be a part of the Women's Commission. I think it is an important group of women that could be helped in Brookline, and there's a lot of different things that they can go over and improve for the town.
Okay, have you attended meetings of the Women's Commission?
Yes, I attended the first meeting at the beginning of the month.
Uh-huh. Is that the only one you've attended?
Correct.
Okay. What skills and experiences do you have that would be particularly helpful for the commission?
Right now, I'm very actively involved in the Brookline Senior Center. I also started a project there where we go once a week to a senior's home and we sit with them and create a relationship. And I'm working with a specific woman who is lovely, and it's been a value to go in and talk to her and understand different things about what she's done in the community. And I think that Brookline community is a great place to live, and I love being involved. I have children in the community. I'm very active at their schools. I'm very active with all different types of events in the community as well.
Any other questions from the select board? Well, I'll ask you another question. What are some of the things that you think the commission should be doing, similar to maybe some of the things you're doing at the senior center or otherwise?
I think that on the last meeting, a couple of people have brought up doing divisions and kind of tackling different issues with smaller amounts of people. And I think that I've seen that work in the past. And I think that's a really good thing to kind of take a look at doing.
Did you want
Ye-
to?
Sure.
Michael?
I'm wondering if you can expand a little bit on that answer to sort of talk about the kinds of things that you think that those subcommittees should be taking on, the issues or concerns that you think are important?
I think there was two that were stated that were very important, and one was perimenopause for women and having a division created to kind of educate and go over. And there was another one about children and understanding online and different ways of handling different situations in school.
Thank you.
John, did you have your hand up?
I did.
Okay.
This actually is a question for Tiffany. And Melissa, thank you very much for applying for this commission. But the question for Tiffany is, what is the assigned membership for the commission, and where are we in terms of vacancies, et cetera?
I apologize, John. I should have the answer off the top of my head, but I'll need a second to look it up real quick.
That's fine with me, and I apologize if I didn't give you a heads up in advance on that question.
You want us to wait, right?
Oh, you don't have to. You can ask more questions or.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. And as I always say, we will be making our appointments at a later meeting, but we appreciate your application and your interest in the Women's Commission. Thank you, Melissa Mookin. Okay, next, Select Board Goals and Objectives. Who's going to lead that exciting discussion?
It might be Tiffany.
Well, Tiffany's busy.
Doing multiple things at once.
Yeah,
Well,
Um,
Actually, off guard.
Hey, Tiffany, if you wish, I can just try doing the research on that, and you can move.
Can pull it up in a little bit, but
Okay.
okay, so the version in your packet, the fiscal year 27 goals and objectives, I did include a red line version. There are minor updates to it. Select board member Michael Rubenstein made some adjustments if you'd like to speak to them kind of about the why.
Sure. So following our discussion last week, which I appreciate all of the comments and guidance from other members of the select board, I made an attempt in this version to use formatting to sort of preface each goal with the reasons why. And I appreciate Chair Green's the use of the same format. I believe it was, or whoever added the additional items. I suspect it was you,
Yeah.
based on the items. Using that format as well to distinguish between why we are trying to accomplish this goal from how we are providing guidance to town staff in accomplishing this goal. It is my hope that this document serves serves to communicate to both town meeting and the broader public the select board's intentions and foci over this budget cycle, in addition to, of course, all of the routine budget activity that happens. I recall from previous budget years that there was concern that people were not apprised of the budget process or opportunities for engagement early enough. So it's my hope that this document and the additional activity for the budget is revealed in a more timely fashion, such that when we get to the budget votes in May, there's plenty more understanding of the content and the process that was used to arrive at the budget, which I think will be helpful for town meeting and Brookline as a whole.
Great, thank you.
I'm
Paul.
just curious, is this something new? Because this is what we usually do, right? We're
Yeah,
not
well,
doing something different here. This is,
But
we
in-
set goals and objectives and then we develop the budget.
Yeah, goals and objectives are part of the budget process.
Yeah.
We're trying to inform town departments of what, the select
is
board's
what we've been
goals are
doing
so
each
that
year.
they, well, we've been doing it every year, but, this, what I'm trying to do is get it focused and really better understood by both the public as well as town staff,
Gotcha.
so that, it's not a bunch of platitudes, we want world peace, right?
Yep.
But rather,
Yep.
specific things that, we want to at least try to accomplish within the fiscal year that we're
Yeah.
preparing for.
Yeah, I guess my point is, it sounded like Mike was saying this is something new. It's not. It's what we've been doing for the past several years.
But-
And each year we do it,
Better.
we refine it, we refine our.
Yes,
Okay.
I totally appreciate and agree with you.
Yeah.
In this case, the particular sort of goal in refinement, as I was proposing both last week and this week,
Yeah.
was to provide information within the goals that was more easily understandable and explainable to both town meeting and the broader public in response to inquiries and concerns about the transparency of that process.
Okay, any other discussion?
So this is consistent with what we spoke about, we agreed on last week, except it looks like you added.
There were two new items, yes, that
5 and
Chair
6.
Green added. Yeah.
Well, we talked about 5, but 6 is a new one, improve town governance through community input.
Well, we did talk about that. This is much more concise and,
Very early on, yes.
Okay,
So brought it back around.
because it wasn't in last week.
It wasn't in last week's.
John.
If I may, I just want to make a couple of comments, because I think people might be wondering, why does this seem to go on and on and on? That, there have been several meetings at which goals and objectives have come up. There, a lot of back and forth about it. From my perspective on this, we are improving. I think, Michael, thank you very much for applying your very sort of sharp eye to this and offering your contributions as to how it can be improved. What I have observed, just looking at several other communities as well, the same thing happens in community after community after community. It's always a struggle between stating goals that everybody would say, well, that's obvious. Of course we want to have better streets this year. Of course we want to support our schools this year. Of course we want to do this. It's between that and an ultra specific goal, which raises all kinds of questions of, are these out of thin air? Do they line up with what the department heads would say is a reasonable expectation, if you get really specific with your goals? So people shouldn't be surprised that we take a lot of time trying to figure out exactly the right way of formulating these goals and objectives. And they shouldn't be surprised if we start all over again next year and try to improve them a little bit further. And I think always in the direction of how can these be operable? How can this goal actually lead to, a specific commitment, which then is measurable, a year later, and so we set goals and we tied them to some particular objectives. And then we measured a year later, how did we do? You know, that's really the ultimate goal of all of this. And I think we're making progress.
Yep. And Bernard, I would add that, we are 5 elected officials
Yeah.
that are trying to agree
Yeah.
on what the objectives are for each year. So I think Bernard's been doing a great job leading us through this. You've started this a couple of years ago. So we keep better, like as John had said, Michael's had made a good contribution, but this is hard because there's 5 elected people trying to figure out how to do it.
Yeah. And by the way,
Worse than the committee. trying to
Worse than a
grab-
committee. Yes.
Staff has been great on this. I
Yeah.
mean, they both kind of lead and follow. I mean, they push us along and say, you haven't kind of, come to a final vote on this yet. Could we try again next week, et cetera, et cetera.
So,
David's-
go ahead.
I
Dave.
just wanted to add that I do appreciate how this year I feel that we have some more details included in our goals
Mhm.
and that we are looking to achieve them within the fiscal year. So it's very clear the benchmarks that we're setting for ourselves, and we'll either meet them or we don't.
Mhm.
But I think that's very important. We need to know precisely what we're aiming for in terms of planning. And sometimes in past iterations of this, and also in looking at what other communities do, it'll be that equivalent that we were joking about earlier, we want world peace. And this is moving away from that direction. So I'm very pleased.
Yeah, okay. Okay, this is the select board's set of goals and objectives, but I really urge the community to look in the packet, read it, and give us your comments. There are goals and objectives, but, it'd be very helpful to us as we go forward to get comments, critiques, and just new information from the community. So,
And they do precede the budget, correct? It goes into the budget book, correct? Correct.
correct, yeah.
Published with the budget.
Michael?
Right. Oh, I was going to follow up on Paul's point. We will also, as part of putting this into the budget, not into the budget, into the financial plan, have an opportunity to look at these goals again and also hopefully incorporate metrics that come from the staff's budget proposals and their guidance and proposals in terms of how we might specifically implement many of these goals.
Chair Green, can I just make one more comment
Yes.
for the benefit of the public? In addition to this being posted in the public packet, after this meeting, sometime later this week, I'll also be posting it to the select board's page on brooklinema.gov. So folks will be able to see it there as well.
Great, thank you. Okay, are we ready to vote on approving the goals and objectives for fiscal year 27? Okay, sounds like we are. I didn't hear any objection. So all in favor of the select board's fiscal year 2027 goals and objectives, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac,
Aye.
Paul Warren,
Aye.
David Perlman,
Aye.
Michael Rubenstein,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Thank you. It will not go into the file that no one opens, all right? This is a live document that we will be using and referring to as we get into the budget process. Okay, next, what's next on our agenda here? Oh, here's a small item. MBTA Sea Line Project Update and Tree Removal Hearing Appeal. This is a public hearing with respect to appeals from decision by the Tree Planting Committee. In addition to that, we're going to be hearing from the MBTA in terms of the entire project. So I've been given a script to keep me on track here, and I'm gonna read it, but I will put my spin on some words. Okay, I want to thank the MBTA team for joining us tonight. We are glad to have you here to present this long-anticipated and important project to improve accessibility along the Green Line C Branch in Brookline. As many of you know, the Green Line C Branch runs along Beacon Street under a historic grant of location from the town of Brookline. The MBTA is undertaking a major system-wide initiative to make all of its stations ADA compliant. ADA compliant is not just for people with disabilities. I mean, it's also a safety issue for many people who may have mobility limitations or may have just broken their leg skiing the previous weekend. This includes modifying, relocating, or expanding several stations along Beacon Street, and those changes require formal amendments to the existing grant of location from the town. Let's see. This evening, after a brief overview of the entire project, we will hear a focused presentation on proposed upgrades at Tappan Street and Inglewood Avenue, the T stations at those locations. These are the first two stations in Brookline scheduled to advance under the MBTA's current design-build contract. The MBTA is expected to return to the Select Board for a formal grant of location hearing on September 30. At that time, there will be a public comment session, and the Select Board may vote on the MBTA's request to amend the existing grant of location. The purpose of tonight's meeting is for the Select Board to hear the full project presentation, understand the proposed changes, and ensure that community concerns are being meaningfully addressed ahead of the upcoming public hearing and vote, and to hold a public hearing as a separate matter for the tree removals proposed by the MBTA for those two stations that have been approved by the Tree Planting Committee. There have already been a number of public meetings related to this project in advance of this evening. Last week, the Tree Planting Committee held a hearing to review the proposed removal of public shade trees, as well as the MBTA's replanting plan. That committee voted after the public hearing to approve the removals. However, their decision was appealed to the Select Board by many, many people. The Select Board is now required under Chapter 87 of the Massachusetts General Laws to hold a public hearing and render a final decision. That tree hearing will take place this evening as well, as I said. I also want to take a moment to inform the public about two important meetings happening tomorrow, September 17, via Zoom. First, the Commission on Disability will meet at 5:30 p.m. to receive a presentation from the MBTA and provide feedback on accessibility and usability from a lived experience perspective. Second, the Transportation Board will meet at 6:55 p.m. and will open its public hearing on issues related to parking, crosswalks, and traffic flow associated with the station design. They will provide recommendations back to the Select Board in advance of our September 30 meeting on the locations, grant of locations. For those of you with detailed questions or concerns about transportation-related impacts, tomorrow evening's meeting is the best place to raise those. Let me review briefly the order of operations. Let me review briefly the order of speakers for this evening. First, we will begin with the MBTA's full presentation of the project, with a focus on the Tappan Street and Inglewood Avenue stations. I assume they'll also give you a sense of the total program, or total project. Next, Select Board members will have an opportunity to ask clarifying questions about the project. Following that, we will open the public hearing regarding the proposed tree removals. During that hearing, we will begin by hearing from the chair of the Tree Planting Committee, then the chair of the Commission on Disability. That will be followed by public comment and questions from the community, including from those who submitted formal objections to the Tree Planting Committee's decision and who wish to be heard tonight. We will close the hearing and have questions and comments from the Select Board, and then possibly a vote. Speakers will have 3 minutes to speak, and we have allotted up to 1 hour for the hearing if needed. We will prioritize individuals who signed up or submitted written comments in advance. Though we may also alternate between commenters with differing viewpoints or questions in order to ensure that we hear all arguments community members may wish to present. You do not need to repeat arguments that others have made. Before we begin the presentation, I want to provide a brief summary of the roles and authority of the various boards and commissions involved. First, the Tree Planting Committee has jurisdiction over public shade tree removals. However, when objections are filed, as they were in this case, the Select Board becomes the final decision-making authority. That is why we are holding a public hearing tonight and will be rendering a decision on the proposed removals and replanting plan. Second, the Select Board also holds the authority to grant and amend a grant of location for the MBTA's use of Beacon Street. That authority comes from special legislation and general law. Because the proposed station upgrades will adjust or expand the MBTA's existing footprint, the MBTA must petition the Select Board for an amended grant of location. As I mentioned, a public hearing on the grant of location will be held on September 30th. Third, the Transportation Board regulates traffic rules and roadway operations in Brookline. This includes on-street parking, crosswalks, curb cuts, and circulation. While they do not vote on the grant of location, they play an important advisory role and may provide input that the Select Board considers when reviewing the MBTA's petition. With that, I want to thank everyone for being here and for your engagement in this important process. We understand that this is a complex and significant project with a lot of community interest. Our goal is to conduct tonight's meeting in a way that is open, respectful, and informed by all perspectives. So let us start off with the MBTA's presentation. And please introduce yourself. And Mr. Conover, you're a resident of our fair city, our fair town,
That is true.
and that should be noted.
So good evening. The MBTA would like to thank the Select Board for having us. As you mentioned, my name is Matt Conover, and I am a resident here in Brookline and a C Branch rider. So I have a vested interest in this project, not just from my perspective and seat at the MBTA, but also here within the town. Tonight, I'm joined by Gwen Dunlevy, who is our Deputy Chief of Integrated Transit Programs and leads the GLT program. Maha Jarar, our project manager, Tess Paganelli, who's our Director of Environmental Permitting and Review. And then we also have a support team online, including engineers, arborists, and technical experts. There we go. So this evening, we'll provide a general overview of the project, and then we'll do a deep dive into the first two stations to be improved. That's Inglewood Avenue and Tappan Street stations. This is a design build project. We're able to start construction on these two stations while additional details are being refined for the remaining stations along the C Branch. While we're discussing two stations this evening, all of our analysis and designs have evaluated the cumulative impact along the Beacon Street corridor. We'll also be highlighting several significant improvements that the MBTA has made in conjunction with the town. This includes the removal of backup generators to ensure the successful future of the bridle path, the addition of new tree lawns, as well as individual station improvements, including the width and length of the stations to make sure that we minimize our impact on the overall environment. Currently, there are 9 inaccessible stations on the C Branch. Accessibility is a shared priority by the MBTA and the town of Brookline, which seeks to ensure safe, livable community for all residents. This project will upgrade 6 stations by raising the platforms to 8 inches. For those that ride the C Branch and may be familiar with our stations, St. Mary's and Coolidge Corner are 2 examples of stations that are already accessible at 8 inches. We will also combine Brandon Hall and Fairbank Street stations to improve travel times and ensure that the new Type 10 trains can serve all of the stations on the C Branch. Lastly, we will eliminate Kent Street Station due to its proximity to Haas and to improve travel times further for our customers. These significant improvements do require trade-offs, which our team has actively been engaged with the town on. For example, at the planning committee last week, there was a significant discussion around the 36-inch pin oak at Tappan Street Station. The team will explain in more detail, but that trade-off was made with the knowledge that the new wider trucks on the underneath the bottom of the Type 10 trains, which will go into service in 2027, cannot pass by that tree without making a contact. The team also received comments regarding the removal of parking spaces at previous transportation board meetings. Our team has made notable changes to ensure that the maximum number of parking spaces are retained at the end of this project. Working with town staff, elected officials, and technical experts, we've gone through a series of options and refinements to balance these trade-offs and to develop a project that provides equal access to all while minimizing negative impacts. For those familiar with the 9 stations I've mentioned, the challenge of the existing corridor will be familiar. Our team has heard from numerous individuals who cannot access the station in front of their own home due to the accessibility challenges that I'll describe here. And I'll walk through this slide from left to right, and I'll talk about the pictures top and bottom at the same time as I go across. So no protection from traffic and steep slopes. Stations like St. Paul, shown here, do not offer protection from automotive traffic. As a daily rider, I often worry about my own safety. In the second row, you can see that the platforms are not level, and there are steep slopes which are inaccessible and create challenges for mobility devices, strollers, and shopping carts, not to mention some tenuous conditions when there's rain or ice. In the second row there, you see that there are platforms, again at St. Paul, where there's station crowding and there's not enough room. So individuals are forced to stand between the lane of traffic on Beacon Street and our tactile strip there against the rail. Underneath that picture, stations also have uneven surfaces. Like the one shown here at Dean Road, this makes using a mobility device like a wheelchair or a walker impossible. Next, the top of the third column is an image of Tappan Street, and it shows customers waiting in the limited space between Beacon and the yellow safety line. Devices like strollers or mobility scooters simply do not have enough room to fit in these locations. Underneath that, there's a platform. You can see an obstruction, a tree. Mobility devices cannot pass this either. This further creates a pinch point and safety concerns for all of our customers. And in some cases, as I mentioned before, it creates a physical conflict with the new Type 10 trains. Stations like Hawes, shown here on the last column, have limited wayfinding, and it is in particular difficult to tell what station you're at while you're on board the train. So this plan will actually add new parallel wayfinding features similar to what is in our subway. So when you're on board the train, you can look out and identify which station you're at. And lastly, stations are poorly lit. Most of them today rely on city or town lights and do not have their own infrastructure. This project will address the challenges that I just described. At the completion of the project, the entire C branch will be accessible. In working with the town of Brookline, we've designed a project that will preserve the look and feel of Beacon Street, which is unique to Brookline and a treasure for us all. Through the station consolidations, closures, and shifting the platform locations at some of these stops, the MBTA expects to see a 3 to 7% decrease in travel times. The project will improve wayfinding and lighting, as I previously mentioned. In partnership with the town, we have minimized impacts to the public shade trees, and we've developed a plan to replant consistent tree lawns along the Beacon Street corridor. We've done this through vetting all the station locations and the sizes to ensure a minimum number of trees are impacted. We've incorporated a tree lawn at the back of the platform areas to eliminate impervious surfaces, reduce urban heat pockets, and provide a location for replanting along Beacon Street that will ensure consistent and evenly spaced trees. Again, in partnership with the town, our team has refined and changed our design to ensure that the maximum number of parking spaces are maintained at the end of this project. Lastly, in working with the town again, we did make design changes to our generators by removing those and coming up with a new technology that allows us to provide backup power at our stations, but will not impact the bridle path, ensuring that there is no conflict between our plan as it exists today and the concept plan of the town's bridle path in the future. This project has taken a significant amount of work from both the MBTA team as well as the town of Brookline. In a collaborative effort, we began back in 2022 with the initial design phase. To date, we've had 12 public engagements, including open houses, various presentations to town boards, as well as a MIPA outreach here in Brookline. We'll be at the Transportation Board and the Committee on Disability tomorrow, September 17th, and then we'll be back in front of the Select Board on September 30th, as you heard earlier from the chairperson. Once underway, the project is anticipated to move relatively quickly, ending before the end of 2026. So with that, I will now hand it over to Gwen Dunleavy and Maha Jarar, who will talk more detailed about Tappan and Englewood stations.
Thanks, Matt. Hello, everyone. My name is Maha Jarar. I am the project manager for the Sea Branch Accessibility Project. In the next few slides, we will be representing the two stations that we are seeking your approval for. Starting with Englewood Avenue Station, we will start with looking through the existing conditions at Englewood Avenue Station. This photo of Englewood Station was taken at the intersection of Beacon Street and Englewood Avenue, looking west toward Cleveland Circle. Currently, the two platforms are across from each other. A few key issues to note that Matt has mentioned earlier are the narrow platforms and the non-compliant crossslopes at this station. In the next slide, our team produced a rendering for the same perspective view as the photo illustrating the proposed conditions. In this scenario, the outbound platform will remain in place but will be widened to 7.5 feet. The inbound platform, however, will be relocated to the east side of Beacon Street and Englewood Avenue intersection. This shift is necessary to accommodate the code-required platform widening while avoiding impacts to the existing turn lane on the south side of Beacon Street, which is shown on the left side of this rendering. Another rendering shows the proposed station design at track level, looking west toward Cleveland Circle. The inbound platform is visible on the left. Key features include accessible track crossings, lighting, trash receptacles, wayfinding signage, and fencing. The view also highlights the proposed 5-foot wide tree lawns with planted trees, which will help reduce the heat island effect, improve stormwater drainage through added pervious surfaces, and provide optimal growing conditions for the new trees. These elements will be discussed in more detail in the following slides.
Hello, my name is Gwen Dunleavy. I'm the Deputy Chief of Integrated Transit Programs, overseeing the Green Line Transformation Program, which manages a holistic portfolio of projects aimed at modernizing the Green Line. I may be familiar to some of you as I've been delivering projects along the Green Line, including in Brookline for the MBTA for the past 5 years. As Matt shared, our team's been hard at work evaluating different options for the creation of these improved stations to find the best ways to limit these impacts. The impacts have been significantly reduced through these efforts, but some impacts cannot be avoided. From our meetings with the town, there are 4 main items that are considered the top priorities. These are the trees, parking, pedestrian crossings, and the bridle path, which we will all go over in detail today. After a detailed review of every location with the town staff, we have determined the best layouts with the least impacts to each of these items. First, we are reviewing the trees. There are a total of 5 trees in the planned platform area that, if left, would prevent us from building a fully accessible platform. But as part of this project, we will be replanting 20 new trees in the platform area to make up for the loss of these existing trees. The drawing here shows the before and after of the platform and the trees that will be removed. On top, the existing trees are shown with those that need to be removed depicted in yellow. The drawing on the bottom shows the platforms with the new trees with their canopy size after a few years of growth once the trees have established themselves. The MBTA is committed to the town to do everything it can to maintain the character and green space along the historic Beacon Street corridor and to leave the space overall in a better condition when we finish the project than it is when we start. This will include adding significant trees west of Englewood where there currently are none. Through close collaboration with the town of Brookline and their arborists, our team has developed our tree replanting plan. To ensure that trees will thrive and have the best chances of success, the team is including in our plan installing structural soils where possible to allow the tree roots to grow in a nutritious and moist environment with ample drainage, along with the use of fresh loam instead of general fill in the planting beds. The trees will be planted at a size and spacing recommended by the project arborist to maximize the chances of successful growth, and a selection of species recommended by the Brookline arborist will be used, which were selected for their hardiness and the large shade trees that they will grow into. The MBTA will provide a 1-year maintenance period and warranty on all trees to ensure there will they are well established prior to when they'll be turned over to the town as permanent assets. In addition to the new trees, the MBTA will be adding the existing trees, and the construction areas will be protected throughout the project utilizing means and methods developed through coordination between state, MBTA, and Brookline protection standards. On this slide, we go over specific trees being affected, including their conditions. The MBTA's team did a detailed inventory of all the trees along the corridor that could be affected by this project, and the numbers here correspond to that inventory. The inventory was used as one of the primary tools to determine the best station locations with the smallest impacts to the town. Here we look at 2 red oak trees between 1 and 2 feet in diameter. They are in fair to good condition, and one of the 2 is showing signs of disease currently. The second slide is looking at 1 red maple, which is 3 inches in diameter. It is a relatively new tree, and 2 oak trees that are between 1 and 2 feet in diameter. These trees are all in fair to poor condition and are all exhibiting signs of disease. Next, we can take a quick look at parking. This is an area where we have seen the most improvement from the original designs through our efforts with the town, significantly reducing these parking impacts. There are 2 types of parking along this corridor that are being impacted: the angle parking along the westbound Beacon Street and the parallel parking on the eastbound. In the angle parking, there will only be 2 spaces removed, depicted in yellow with red X's. These are to provide accessible exits from the platforms at the far ends and to allow an area of refuge in case of an emergency on the platform. For parallel parking, there is a length of 8 spaces being removed, shown at the bottom of the top drawing, with yellow X's highlighting each space. This is due to the extra space needed for the wider platform to make a safe, accessible path. The remaining width gained from the parking removal is used to create the tree lawn we mentioned earlier. Next, we can take a look at the pedestrian crossings. The current configuration has 1 inaccessible crossing and an inaccessible track crossing on the eastbound of Beacon Street. The new configuration will relocate that eastbound Beacon Street crossing and make it fully accessible. It will also create 2 accessible track crossings, 1 aligned with that new eastbound crossing and 1 at the far end of the station. Lastly, although the project team is not involved in the Bridle Path project, we have worked with the town to position all of the station infrastructure not to impede the future design and construction of the Bridle Path. This includes resetting the shelters along the back of the platform and changing from a generator for emergency backup power to an inverter system that takes up less space and can be located away from the Bridle Path. Our last slide on Englewood is an aerial view looking west towards Cleveland Circle, giving a good vantage of what the overall station will look like once the project is complete.
All right, now moving on to the next station, Tappan Street Station review. We'll walk through the existing conditions and review the proposed improvements, similar to the format we use for Englewood Avenue Station. Starting with a photo of the existing conditions, this image is taken from the outbound platform, looking south toward the inbound platform and Beacon Street. As with Englewood Avenue Station, Tappan Street Station faces similar challenges, including narrow platforms and non-compliant slopes. The rendering shows the same perspective, but with the platform in place. This view is showing the customer assistance area, lighting, wayfinding signage, and other platform amenities such as fencing and benches. Another rendering that shows the proposed station design at track level, looking east towards St. Mary's. Similar to Englewood Avenue Station, the platform will include key amenities such as accessible track crossings and wayfinding signage. A key feature to highlight in this view is the increased platform width, along with the distinctive fencing designed to enhance rider safety during boarding and alighting.
At Tappan, there are a total of 4 trees, highlighted in yellow again, in the planned platform area that, if left, would prevent us from building the fully accessible platform. This includes the 36-inch pin oak that the town has voiced its concerns about, and which we will go into more detail about shortly. As at Englewood, the MBTA is committed to the town to do everything it can to maintain the historic character of the corridor and continue to work to leave the space overall better when we finish than when the project starts. Through close collaboration with the town of Brookline and their arborists, our team has determined that we can fit 10 new trees at this location. The drawing here, like the others, shows the canopy size of the new trees after a few years of growth, once the trees have established themselves. As before, the plan includes installing structural soils in locations that allow tree roots to grow in the nutritious environment with ample drainage, and along with that, the use of fresh loam in the planting beds at a spacing and size chosen for the best chances of success. Here again, we go over the specifics of the trees being impacted by the projects and their conditions. At this location, we have 3 green ash trees between roughly around 1 foot in diameter between poor and fair condition, 2 of which are showing those signs of disease. And lastly, we have the pin oak that we have discussed previously and we'll discuss further now. This tree is in good condition, but we do have a picture here that we hope helps illustrate how close the trains are to that tree and how impactful it would be to keep that tree in the station platform. With collaboration with the town, we have worked diligently to determine that any alternative station configurations would impact additional trees and would not save the pin oak. At the tree planting committee, we had shared that a recent analysis had determined that there was a conflict between the pin oak and the new trains. The MBTA has done a detailed review of the entire Green Line to determine where the wider undercarriage will have conflicts with potential obstructions along the track, which identified this tree as a concern. The T started with a LiDAR scan of the entire system using a device similar to the one pictured here on the left. This is similar to radar, but with the use of lasers instead to identify nearby objects and digitally identify potential conflicts. This was followed by running a custom-built device along the tracks in conflict locations identified by the LiDAR to physically confirm these conflicts. It's a bit hard to see how this works in the picture, as all this work was done at night when trains weren't running, but it shows the device along with the conflict information board signifying the location, conflict number, and what type of impact it is. The rubber identifying train conflicts is folded back as it passes the tree due to the impact with the roots. The root area encroaches on the train trucks by about 2 3/8 inches.
Advance the slide, I think you.
No.
I advanced by mistake. I jumped back
Okay.
on purpose, sorry. So the rubber, and again, I will fully admit that these pictures taken by the engineers in the middle of the night while they were doing this physical review are not the easiest to follow. But that rig is a piece of black rubber that runs along in the same place that the car truck would. It is folded back at the bottom because it is impacting with the roots of the tree. And that impact has been identified as about 2 3/8 inches of impact. On top of the possible direct physical conflicts, we also need to keep clearances around the train for safety. This is called the dynamic envelope and accounts for things like wind, passenger weight, rail wear, and other types of physical instances that could cause the train to not be perfectly centered and even on the tracks. The MBTA requires a minimum of 3 inches of clearance, but builds for 6 inches as that is our preferred clearance for maximum safety. Between trains, this is even greater, with clearances of an additional 6 inches beyond that and up to 30 inches where we have the space to do so. And these clearances needed between trains vary based on location, train speed, track conditions, and things like that. This is important for the Type 10s, as we will show in this next slide. So the first picture we show here is an outline of the current Type 9 trains that is in orange. Most importantly to draw your attention to is the undercarriage or trucks, which are fairly narrow and don't go significantly outside the rails. Next, we overlay the Type 10 vehicle in blue, which has a significantly wider undercarriage. This is required to allow for the fully accessible low floor design of the new trains. Here we show some dimensions. The undercarriage on the new Type 10 trains is 6 inches wider than the Type 9s. This is in that 3-inch area below the door height on the trains. The picture we show can also highlight in yellow this area of impact and the portion of the train that exceeds the dimensions of the existing trains. This is the section that is in conflict with the roots of the pin oak and requires a significant cutback to give the clearances to get by safely. In addition to building the platform or an accessible walkway around the tree, which would impact roots on the other 3 sides of this tree. Both the project and town arborists were in agreement that the tree would likely not survive this impact to roots on all 4 sides, and would also likely create a safety hazard in destabilizing the tree due to the loss of roots. With this, it was determined there was no configuration of the station that could save this tree. And that was why the station configuration that is chosen has moved forward. Next, we take a look at the parking at Tappan. This is a very similar situation to what we have at Englewood. The angle parking will again have 2 spaces that need to be removed to allow for those area of refuge and accessible exits. And the parallel parking similarly will have 8 spaces of space being removed due to the space needed to make a wider platform. When it comes to track crossings, this configuration will not move any crossings significantly, but will upgrade the pedestrian crossing of the street to be a fully accessible crossing and take the one accessible or inaccessible track crossing, make it accessible, and add a second accessible track crossing at the far end of the station. We also at the station have moved both the platform shelters and the backup electrical equipment out of the path of the future bridle path plans to make sure that we will not impede that potential future project. Finally, we show a similar aerial view rendering like Englewood. This was looking west towards Cleveland Circle, giving a good vantage of the overall final condition that we expect to give with this platform. Before we close, I want to thank everyone for your time in reviewing this extremely important project with us. I know we talk about this as an accessibility project, as this is the biggest change that you'll see. But this project will not just bring major changes to people with accessibility needs, but improvements to safety and user experience for anyone who uses this station in the future. I look forward to these improvements benefiting all C Branch riders in the years to come. And if there are any comments, we are open and have the team ready to answer.
Okay. Okay, any questions from the select board? John?
Yeah, a few questions, if I may. I heard repeatedly reference to contact with the roots. I mean, did you mean to say base or do you mean roots?
So in this location, the asphalt is heaving up due to the roots uplifting it, and the contact is significant enough that it would go deep enough that it would not just impact that asphalt, but the roots underneath.
Yeah, now I'm even more confused. So these are roots that are underground but pushing up, okay? So is the type 10 undercarriage not only wider, but deeper, closer to the ground?
So the Type 9 undercarriage, where it is at its lowest, is limited almost exclusively to directly over the rails, where the Type 10 undercarriage sticks out much further. So that low clearance, basically rail height clearance, is much further out on the Type 10s than it is on the Type 9s.
But people, and I'm one of them, have taken photographs of the pin oak, and it clearly shows where the base of the pin oak touches on the yellow stripe on the platform. Is the undercarriage going to come anywhere near that base that touches on the yellow stripe? Because people have measured the distance, and it's, you know, there's an existing distance that's more than 6. You said it's going to be an additional 6 inches wide.
So the specifics of that, I think, were reviewed by that physical device that they took out onto the tracks. They found that it did impact with, I guess, the root flare is what you would call it, underneath the asphalt there.
Okay.
So cutting a notch out of that would be what would happen on the track side of this. this tree.
I think I think I speak for a lot of people in saying that's a completely new understanding of what is meant by, the contact that would be caused by the size of the Type 10 versus the Type 9 trains. And I think the people who are not convinced that the Type 10 would come in contact with the base of the pin oak, I'm not so sure that they are going to be convinced that there's going to be contact with, I'm going to call them underground roots as a result of the difference between the Type 10 and the Type 9 undercarriages. I mean, can you sort of be a little bit more specific about that? How much deeper is the undercarriage that it would cut into the existing asphalt and affect a root?
So
We might go back to the slide. It has that depth on there. I think it's 2 inches deeper and it's 6 inches wider approximately.
All right, so 2 inches deeper. You answered my question. Good.
I think it's 3
Oh,
or
sorry,
2,
two.
and
Okay.
3/4.
3/4 or something like that, but
Okay,
about 3,
okay.
yes.
Okay, and then I'm going to have some more questions later, maybe, depending on what questions other people ask, but I do want to get in one more right now. You also referenced frequently that the tree would interfere with the accessibility of the platform, but that's not the same as the tree would make contact with the passing Type 10 car. So are we kind of changing what's the problem with the tree here?
It's not that we're changing, it's that there are several problems with the tree. We have, I think, highlighted one specific one that has become the focus, but there are a half dozen different problems that make keeping this tree very problematic. But the main reality is that to make an accessible path around the tree and the foundations of the platform, if we were to try to keep the tree, we would be cutting into the root system on the 3 outsides as we create this path around the tree to be able to park a train and have people access it. In cutting into the root on this 4th side, we are now cutting into the roots potentially of this tree on 4 different sides, all 4 sides. And both our arborists, and I know that in his conversations with the town arborists, have felt that this is going to be lethal to the tree if we move forward with putting a station here and working around this tree. Not only that, but because we'd be cutting into roots on potentially 4 different sides, it would destabilize the ability of the tree to stay upright and create a potentially very serious safety issue of the tree toppling over into, I'm not sure which way it's leaving, either into the tracks or into the street.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just because I don't want people to be confused by this conversation. So are we talking about cutting into the roots in the process of excavating the new platform, or are we talking about cutting into the roots by the passage of a Type 10 car in the vicinity of the tree?
So we are talking about, I guess, both. On
Okay.
3 sides, we will be cutting into the roots to excavate for a accessible path or platform.
Yeah.
On the track side, we will have to cut into the asphalt and roots to give the proper safety clearance for a Type 10 train to pass.
And I have to say, I attended the tree committee's hearing on this. I don't even remember hearing the phrase "cutting into the roots." So I'm just going to leave it at that for now. I might be back later with some more questions. Thank you.
Oh,
Yep, thank you. And John, thanks for clarifying, that helped clarify for me the issues around the tree. It does sound like they've looked at the tree and they're trying to find a path around it, which would cut into roots.
Yeah.
And that thing that they showed, the custom-made measuring physical device, looked like it hit the tree. Now, it's the blacktop, but underneath it is a root.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
ultimately, it sounds like the train is going to hit the tree, which is no bueno.
Well, well, Paul, if I may, just because I don't want people to be confused by this. I didn't hear the phrase "cutting into the roots" at the prior hearing, and the decision was made at that hearing that the tree planning committee, with some reluctance and basically caveats from I think all 3 of the members, said, okay, well, we're kind of okay with that pin oak. But, but they didn't, I don't think they heard that the reason for getting rid of the pin oak was contact cutting of the roots. And I do know from other tree planting hearings that have been held over time
Yeah.
that cutting roots is not regarded by all arborists as necessarily fatal to trees.
Is
There
our
was a tree on
arborist-
Hammond Street that the tree planting committee determined to.
Our arborist is
place.
here. Could we ask the
Yeah,
opinion of
yeah,
our arborist? Could
yeah.
you come up and speak about cutting into roots of trees? And I assume you've been talking with the MBTA and understanding what they're proposing, both at the track and on the other side, in order to potentially make an
Yeah,
accessibility.
and
what
we
they're gonna-
apologize for doing this because you're very new. So introduce yourself.
Paying them for.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Select Board. My name is Jack Schleifer. I'm the new urban forestry manager for the town, also an ISA certified arborist, and happy to share my perspective on this. I think there are contexts in which some root interference is survivable for trees. The challenge here is that this is the root flare, which is like really structurally significant for the tree. It's kind of right where the tree starts to taper from its trunk into the root system. And that's right where we would see the contact with the train. So I personally would not be comfortable with this significant of an interference between the train and the tree, cutting into it and then leaving it in that status, especially when we see that there's going to be so much other construction impact around the tree. So I trust the professionals here from the MBTA team to have done a really thorough investigation. We've tried to design around this as much as possible, and we see that there's a lot of interference here that makes it pretty challenging. So I think it's different when it's a tree in the back of someone's residential property that's like settled in a lawn and there can be some roots cut. Perhaps that's something we try to avoid no matter what in our work in the town. But here it's a really structurally significant part of the tree that would expose it to a lot of risk, and that degree of residual risk is concerning to leave the tree in that space.
But I do think John raised a good point about the primary conversation has been about the route facing the track. Could you talk about, it sounds like in order to put up if you were to go around the tree, which you're still going to hit the tree with the track, if you were to go around the tree, you'd have to build some sort of platform foundation to support the platform. What would that do to the roots, and is that detrimental to the tree as well?
Yeah, as Gwen shared, that would require a degree of excavation on 3 sides of the tree, and then there would be this impact cutting into the root flare on the 4th side. So that would require just carving out most of the structural root system of this tree in a way that is unfortunately not really sustainable for the tree and not something that I understand it could endure, at least not long term. I think we'd see a lot of decline in the tree, and that's something that our town would need to spend resources removing later on.
Hey, David?
So we looked at during a slideshow presentation what the proposal would be for Tappan Street and Englewood in particular. Now, if the type 10 train is presumably running the entirety of that track, not just at these stops, have you identified other trees that may need to come down along the track, irrespective of stops, anywhere along the track that would interfere with this lower platform?
Yes, we have. Fortunately, the number of trees is very small. I believe there are 2 other trees along this corridor that have a similar situation to what we're seeing here. Both are in the vicinity of current station platforms. So as we develop this project and come back to both the tree planting committee and the select board for those stations, we would be highlighting those trees and bringing those to the attention of the group. Throughout the corridor, all of these stations have at least some tree impacts. So we will be doing that for every single station, but specifically for the wider trains, there's only a few trees that have this issue. Because as identified, it's not like the whole train as itself has gotten multiple feet wider. It's just one specific portion of the train got 6 inches wider, but there are a couple trees along the corridor that has an impact.
So are you saying that from St. Mary's all the way to Cleveland Circle, just 2 more trees would be impacted with respect to the wider berth of the type 10?
I believe it is 2, it might be 3, but that it is 2 or 3 trees. It is not like 6, 10. It is just a couple of trees.
Michael?
I just want to make sure that it's clear that that may be the number of trees that are affected by the type 10 trains, but that is not the number of trees that are affected by the station accessibility project, because we don't know the answer to that because those designs aren't completed for the other stations.
Do you have any estimate of the number of trees that are affected by the design of the stations? Because that's the real issue here. It's not just the undercarriage of the cars.
Yeah, we did do a full hearing with MIPA, or process of MIPA to identify the impacted trees. That number has actually been reduced since we had that, as we've been working through the town and making changes to the design. I believe it is roughly in the 70 range. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. I can check with the team on that and get back to you. But through the full corridor, it is roughly 70 trees. Many of those are in the Fairbanks Brandon Hall, that slope, because we need to build accessible ramps up that slope. And the vast majority are very small trees. They're not the mature trees that we are talking about here, but there is a lot of very small trees on that slope that will be impacted by those ramps.
Paul?
Yeah, just first for the public, could you define what MIPA is? Many people don't know what MIPA is.
Oh, I have an expert here that can talk all about it.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tess Paganelli. I'm the Director of Environmental Permitting and Review at the T. So MIPA, Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act. It's a state program for evaluating cumulative impacts, and our threshold for exceeding and triggering a MIPA review was actually public shade trees. So we did a full alternatives analysis that was overseen by the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs and the MIPA office as well, to make sure we were minimizing impacts to public shade trees as much as possible.
Okay, thank you. That was not my question, but thank you. No, I don't have it for it, but you defined what MIPA was. What people don't know what MIPA is.
And by the way, that was a very important
Very
piece of information that I wish we had in advance. Anyway, go ahead.
But my question is about 88 require. All of this is to make the stations ADA compliant and also more safe and et cetera. But could you talk a little bit about ADA compliance? Where, are you under an order or something? Like, why do we have to do this now? Why can't we wait a few years or 5 years or et cetera?
Yes. So ADA compliance is something that we are required to do. We both are under an order due to a court settlement that took place for not having accessible stations, but also due to FTA funding requirements. We have been told by the FTA that if we do not make our stations accessible, we will be forced to close them. So we are under a deadline for this. We have seen some delays in doing this work throughout the system, but have made some pretty big strides over the past couple of decades in making things accessible. The 3 other lines, red, orange, and blue, are all fully accessible at this point. The green line is the last remaining inaccessible line, with stations on the B, C, and E branch being the really the bulk of what is left. We have projects right now for all 3 branches to try to make all those stations accessible. So we're hopeful with this project and a couple others we're doing that within the next few years, we will be down to maybe 1 or 2 inaccessible stations left on the system.
And just one more clarifying question, Bernard. So this is really important. So you mentioned station closings. Who would decide if the station is closed? Could the feds tell us we have to close the stations? We've lost control, or and when might that happen? Or is that just, to get us excited?
That's that's a complicated answer. To go in a little detail, the feds had told us that if we did not start moving in this direction, they would take away all federal funding from the MBTA. We had put up together a plan for them on how we would bring our stations to an accessible standard. We do have to give them regular updates and prove that we are moving in that direction to keep on their good side, but they would potentially have the power, not necessarily to close all the stations, but to pull all funding from a federal level from the MBTA, which would more or less force our hand in that direction. That is assumed in addition to that court agreement. But Matt can talk a little more about that.
The FTA, actually, for folks who do ride the system outside of Brookline, if you're familiar with the Central Tunnel, Heinz Convention Center, as well as Arlington, actually have stops that are closed to the public because they are deemed not to be equal. And so that's, in FTA's eyes, accessibility means equal access. And so the T has already taken steps to close portions of our stations that are not accessible. And so when we talk about closing stops, it is not just a threat. It is not something that we like to throw around, because it is a serious conversation, but it is something the T has already had to do and could potentially have to do in the future, to Gwen's point regarding funding.
Dave?
And could you define FTA?
The Federal Transit Administration. Thank you. Sorry. It's a lot of acronyms in transit. We carried away with it.
The reason I wanted to differentiate between trees impacted by the wider undercarriage and those that are impacted from widening the platforms is because when you mention that some stations might close, there are proposals that you're offering here today about merging certain stops. So my question would be, are you able to look at tree impact and also decide where would be the best place that provides minimum harm to trees in terms of where you put the platforms and where you put a stop?
Yes, we did look at not necessarily closing stations specifically for that, but that decision was based on how close they were to existing stations to allow people to have a station within a reasonable walking distance from where they would typically go. But we did look at shifting stations potentially hundreds of feet to try to find locations that would be the least impactful to both trees and parking. And I know that through our alternatives analysis that we did with the town, there was one station where we determined that we could move it to basically a different location. We'll be looking at that station in the future, Hawes, that it would save enough trees that it was worth shifting it significantly to make that difference.
All right, thank you.
Michael.
On a slightly different topic, you had talked about the loss of parking spaces, a number of parking spaces at these two stations. And I'm wondering if either you or the town did any analysis as to how much the parking at these two stations in particular is used, either on average or at maximum, to know what the impact on daily use will be for if we have the loss of those parking spaces.
Amy, you need to go to the microphone.
Hi. Yes, we have done some parking counts.
Introduce yourself to our back.
Amy Ingalls, the Associate Director of Transportation and Mobility. Thank you for that reminder. Yeah, so we have done some counts. They are a year or two old, I think at this point. The counts were basically the entire corridor of Beacon Street. And so they were grouped kind of by block. So it depends on how much expanse away from the stations you're talking about. But just overall in general, looking at each station area and the blocks next to it, there's the parking loss would be, I think, generally about less than 10% when you're looking at the entire span of this project. I'm not sure for just these two stations.
Yeah, I was actually asking a question about usage as opposed.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. Yeah, I'm sorry. I need to get those numbers. I actually don't have that with me right today. I apologize.
Oh.
Yep. One last question for me. I hope my last one. It's related. It's not related to the big three: parking, trees, and there's another one, bridle path. It has to do with lighting. So I appreciate that you're electrifying the stations to improve safety and lighting. Much of the lighting along Beacon Street has a historic character to it. If you go down to St. Mary's, you'll see these beautiful old beacon type of poles. They're not the modern metal cranes. And I know that I think we spoke briefly about this at some point. I'm wondering about if we've made any progress on that being able to put in more lighting that's more in keeping with the historic nature of character of Beacon Street, and then finding some way to have an arrangement to do that. I know there's economies of scales for the MBTA, but as you've learned, we're a little different than the other towns and cities that you do it.
Yeah, so at those stations, I think St. Mary's and Coolidge Corner we do have those historical lights, as you pointed out. Those were supplied by the town of Brookline and are maintained by the town. I have confirmed with our executives that we'd be open to a similar arrangement at any of these stations. If they are lighting that the MBTA is installing, we would have to do our MBTA standard because that's what we can maintain realistically. But we are open to either installing our lights now and then giving the option to the town in the future to replace them with their lights, or if the town would like to supply lights, installing those instead of our standard lights as well.
I know cost is a big factor, but it would be really helpful to explore this since it is so important to the character of the corridor.
David?
Just a couple more questions, sticking on to the tree theme for a moment. You mentioned a 1-year warranty on the new tree plantings. Is 1 year selected because that's how long is necessary to know if the tree is really taking hold, or if maybe a question for the arborist, if what would be the ideal amount of time to know that a tree is taking hold?
Yeah, it's a good question because we certainly want to consider the maintenance of these trees long term. We don't want to just put them in and have these investments not make it and then fall on the town. So 1 year warranty is kind of industry standard for planting. That gives the trees a complete growing season and then a winter and then into another growing season for us to see how they are establishing. I mean, realistically, it can take 2-3 years for trees to really establish. So the town will then be prepared and our forestry division will be ready to assume the maintenance and watering for those trees after a year. But that gives a solid amount of time for them to get their roots growing and embedded into the system. So enough time that we're comfortable to really track their progress and make sure that they're not trees selected that aren't viable for the site, because there's a whole bunch of variability in terms of what can come from nurseries and stuff like that.
So then a question for the MBTA team here. Is it your standard for tree replantings that it's 1 year warranty? You never go above that under any circumstance?
Our standard is actually lower than that. We typically do a 1 year warranty and only 60 days of maintenance, but we have upped that for this project because we understand how important it is for this corridor.
So you never exceed 1 year warranty?
We do not. And we can't really get that from a nursery either. So that is what we can offer.
All right. Another question I have that's not tree related. Regarding generators, you talked about removing backup generators at certain stations, switching to inverter systems that I guess can be remotely located. How far away are they located? What's the difference in size?
So it's not necessarily that they can be located further away. They just are significantly smaller in their footprint. A typical generator, you're looking at a footprint of maybe 12 by 18, 12 by 20 feet, where these inverter systems is closer to a 7 by 12, 7 by 15. That difference in size makes a big difference when it comes to trying to fit it in these tight spaces between the road and the tracks. And that is the big change that allowed us to move them out of the bridle path, where those larger generator systems would have a hard time finding locations at most platforms. And they also are just a lot more obtrusive in the way they look because they are diesel generators. They have to have fences around them, which is another big item that you'd see, whereas these electrical panels are much smaller. I know a lot of towns and cities, and we even discussed it with the town, wrap them with local art or things like that. And it's something that the T is open to the town doing, so that you have a much smaller visual impact, but also a smaller physical impact on where they can fit.
Are backup generators more cost effective, and that's why you don't always go with inverter systems?
It's not necessarily that they're more cost effective. It's that they are less technically complicated than connecting to our traction power system. They fill a similar role in that it allows us to keep the station open even if there is a long-term outage in the area. A typical backup battery will only last 90 minutes, where either inverted power or a generator could keep a station running indefinitely. So if you had a hurricane, let's say, and you lost power in an area for a day, you wouldn't have to stop running trains after stopping trains at that station after 90 minutes. You can keep it lit and keep stopping trains at that station throughout the entire time, assuming that the tracks and trains still have power.
And these are typically located at each stop?
They are, yes.
And where does the electricity come from?
So in the case of the inverter system, it connects directly to the train power system. So the overhead catenary wires, pulls its power from there, so that as long as the trains have power, the station will have power. And since that comes from a significantly different source than local power, the MBTA actually generates a lot of its own power and has it come from our system, but also connects to some of the power systems through large traction power substations located in various locations. It is significantly different enough that you would not have a power outage for both at the same time.
I have one question regarding the pin oak tree. When will you When are you planning to take it down if that's what you're gonna do?
So we are still finalizing our schedule, and part of that depends on how we move through these approvals. If we do get approval on these fairly quickly, we could potentially take it down this fall to start construction on these stations. If it does take a little longer or we miss the kind of fall construction season, then we would end up doing it in the spring, where we start construction on the rest of the stations and possibly these stations if we can't fit them in this fall.
Any other questions from the select board? Seeing none, thank you. And we'll now open up our tree planting hearing and with a presentation by the chair of the tree planting committee. And following that, we'll hear from, who will we hear from?
Jim Lee, the chair of the Brookline Commission on Disability.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Liz Erdman. I'm honored to serve as the chair of the tree planting committee. I'm also a town meeting member in precinct 10. Last Wednesday, the tree planting. Sure. Last Wednesday, the tree planting committee held a
Sergeant,
public
oh,
hearing
sorry.
for removal of 9 shade trees at the Tappan and Englewood T stations. Over 50 members of the public attended the hearing, and we heard from numerous residents in writing as well. We've never had this much interest in a tree planting hearing in my 10 years on the committee. But residents have a lot of thoughts about the existing state of the Green Line, and also the concerns about the trees and especially the pin oak at Tappan Station. So we had 2 planning meetings with the MBTA before the hearing where we worked through a lot of design changes, worked on the planting schedule and tree species to be selected for the stations. We worked with our town arborist, Jack Slifer, to select the trees that would be most appropriate for the site. We're able to also choose 2 pin oaks as replacement trees, which was very heartening. The tree planting committee recognizes the essential benefits the proposed upgrades will bring to the town of Brookline. And we also recognize the hard decision that we have here to remove 9 mature trees at this station. During the hearing, we heard from many residents questioning the contact with the pin oak and the need to remove that specific tree. We essentially ran out of time, and in the interest of moving forward, we voted unanimously to allow the MBTA to remove the 9 trees with the caveat that we have further information regarding the rationale to remove the 36 dBH pin oak. Since our meeting, we received further information that was discussed this evening. And based on the counsel of the MBTA arborist and our own arborist, we concur that there's a safety hazard with the design of the station and the pin oak that is there. And so our decision to approve the removal remains.
Thank you.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
A safety hazard or a threat to the tree hazard?
A threat to the tree resulting in a safety hazard. So,
Well, wait a minute. Now I'm confused again.
okay.
We heard cutting into the tree roots. And is that, first of all, had you heard that at the original hearing? Have you heard it subsequently? And is that what you're referring to as the basis of the final decision, which is that this would cut into the tree roots?
We had heard that there'd be contact with the tree, and I think there were enough questions about how exactly is that happening and where is that happening that we said, can we see like the new carriage size and how much that would impact the tree as it is. We did hear definitely in the planning meetings that building the station, widening the platform would also impact the base of the pin oak. So
Okay.
I think it became clear in the meetings today that having stresses on all sides for that tree are going to create, sounded to me like a safety hazard of the tree, not, and it may not happen immediately, but being a risk of
surviving.
falling over.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. David.
Just in terms of trees more broadly, you mentioned 9 mature trees. Are any of these of a DBH that they could be relocated rather than just cut down? And
That's a question for the arborist.
Yeah, that would be for Jack. Want to come up?
I think I know the answer.
Tree that could potentially be relocated, which is something we can discuss further. That's that 3-inch Armstrong red maple. That's the only tree that's small enough. When trees get larger, you're excavating too small a proportion of its root zone for the trees to be able to take that transplant shock. But so unfortunately, the bigger they get and the more we love them, also the harder it is for us to transplant them. But I think there's one where that is something we should discuss further.
thank you.
Let me ask you another question. The trees that we're planting, how long before they become significant size?
That depends slightly on the growing conditions. It's admittedly hard to be an urban tree growing along an MBTA track, but that's why we've been working really hard with their team to have the best mitigation plan overall. And that's why they've talked about the structural soils they're able to try to put in under the platforms, the loam they can put in, the watering and maintenance plans. So I can't give a real resolute answer there, but I think year by year they'll continue to grow. We've also worked really hard on selecting species that are tolerant to these conditions and species that are consistent with the historic planting palette as well, because we want to retain that character. So I'd say, in 5 to 10 years, we're starting to get much more mature canopy trees. But each growing season, we're going to have better results over there as long as we stay on top of the maintenance and care.
Thank you. Anything else from the select board? Any other questions? We'll have another opportunity after the hearing. David.
Also a question for our arborist. So it looks like, at least in the limited proposal we've seen so far, there would be, for example, at the Englewood stop, 20 new trees to replace 5. What does our budget look like for being able to maintain a greater number of trees that we will ultimately have?
Good evening, Erin Chute, Commissioner of Public Works. You heard earlier from Mr. Murphy, as he quoted E.E. Cummings, that there were 14,000 street trees at the time. We have about 12,000 street trees right now that we manage and maintain, and we plant 200 to 400 each year. So we would be looking at this. We would be maintained for the first year by the T, and otherwise it would be worked into our overall planting and maintenance plans. We might adjust a little bit what we're planting on our side to make sure that we can keep up with that. The majority of our costs go into actually hazard tree removal and pruning of large trees.
How was it decided, the 20 to replace 5? How are those decisions made in general?
We were looking at creating as much opportunity to plant as we possibly could in that work zone.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we're going to hear from the chair of the Disabilities Commission. I believe he's online. Yep. Jim Lee.
Yes, thank you. I just want to check to make sure you can hear me.
Yep.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much. I am Jim Lee, Chair of the Brookline Commission on Disability, and obviously we support this project, but I want to make it clear that this project has been 20 years in the making. This goes back to the Daniels Feingold settlement back in 2006. And so for the past few decades, the MBTA has been making various lines accessible. And as stated earlier, the blue line, the red line, and the orange line are all now fully accessible. During that time, organizations have been formed, such as the Riders Transportation Access Group, who has worked closely with the MBTA regarding platform issues, crosswalk issues, as well as wayfinding. And now they've been talking to the town of Brookline as we hit literally and figuratively the end of the line. The final step is the green line. Well, here on the green line, they have spoken to the town, and I can tell you that hearing the past couple of meetings, a lot of progress has been made. The bridle path is back on deck, thankfully. Okay, the tree replacement is here. The generators have been changed, and we've done all this while maintaining the accessibility issues. The improvements to wayfinding is going to be critical to somebody who might be blind or deaf. Audible sounds, visual sounds, letting you know where you are is critical. That currently the system is there, but it's not quite up to snuff. There'll be improvements for both audible and visual wayfinding. Another issue for seniors and people with mobility issues is simply getting on the train. Okay, some of these steps are as high as 14, 15 inches is the first step. That's not only dangerous for somebody with a mobility issue, that's dangerous for somebody with a stroller, somebody with luggage, somebody with a shopping cart, whatever. It's very dangerous, okay? And lastly, what a wheelchair user has to go through to get on the train is just unacceptable. It's just unacceptable. They cannot get on the train. They cannot get on the train. If they want to go to work, if they want to go shopping, they want to go visit a friend, they're not going to do it easily on the Green Line. They're going to have to go and find an accessible station. And there's not many of them along the line. So here, again, we're at the end of the line. We're going to have these platforms be level, the crosswalk slope be appropriate and ADA compliant. And when a wheelchair user can go directly onto the train, it makes a big difference. It's going to make a big difference, again, for people with luggage, people with strollers, etc. And as we approach this, as we reach the final stages, these benefits are going to benefit all of us. I've been saying all along, and I'll say it here. This is not just this is not just an accessibility issue. It's a safety issue. If you've ever stood down at Dean inbound, Tappan Street inbound, St. Paul or Hawes, and you have the Beacon Street traffic right behind you, this is a safety issue. I think that from the previous meetings, the MBTA has come a long way. I think that these accessibility features are critical for all of us. And I ask and urge the select board to approve to move ahead with this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me ask you a question first, and that is, you mentioned the Daniels Feingold settlement. Could you give us a little background on that? Because I think that's a pretty important fact.
Well, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not an expert on this, but I'm going to give you what I've heard and what I've read at mass.gov. My understanding is the Boston Center of Independent Living filed the suit back in 2002, 2003. The MBTA, they can correct me if I'm wrong, agreed to make all of the stops accessible at that point. My understanding is it never went to actual court. My understanding is the MBTA said, yes, we have stations that are inaccessible and we will fix them and we will give you the progress and so on. And from that point on, they began the process. And again, the blue, orange, and red line are currently fully accessible. I think there's one historical station on the blue line that is not accessible, but that's the only one.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's open up the public hearing. And Tiffany, sort of set the rules and let's begin.
Yes.
And we've set aside an hour, so I'm sure that will satisfy everyone's need to speak.
Great. So now that the chair has opened up the public hearing, just a reminder, as the chair stated, we have up to an hour. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. Again, for the record, if you can just state your name and your Brookline precinct number or address. So the first speaker we have is Harry Friedman.
Thank you. My name is Harry Friedman. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 12, member of the advisory committee. Directing most of my comments to the 36-inch pin oak at Tappan. It's the largest and probably the healthiest tree that is initially coming down. It's an important part of the town's tree canopy, fighting climate change and providing respite from the sun for both inbound and outbound passengers at Tappan Street. It is not, at least until tonight, being proposed to come down because the station would otherwise not be accessible. In fact, at the tree planning committee, we were told it was not a matter of accessibility. The MBTA claimed at the tree planning committee that the new Type 10 cars, possibly expected in 2027, are wider than the current cars. Now, I don't have access to all the information they do, but I have access to Wikipedia. There are 3 types of cars on the Green Line, Type 7, Type 8, and Type 9. And according to Wikipedia, the Type 10 cars are the same width as the Type 9, and the Type 10 cars are narrower than the current Type 7 and the current Type 8. Now, tonight, they brought in a new factor. They started talking about trucks or undercarriage, which they had not brought up before, so my information could be incorrect. But there's between the Type 7, the Type 8, and the Type 10, there's about, the Type 7 and 8 are about 2 inches, a little bit less than 2 inches wider than the ones that they're putting in. You're the judge and the jury here. You need to be sure that the MBTA has fully, fairly, and accurately presented all the facts, because it's so much easier to chop down this tree and later say, oops, our mistake, sorry about that, than it is to prevent the facts, and reach the best conclusion before the tree is chopped down. Prior to the public January 15 of this year hearing, they said the pin oak had to come down in order to make the station accessible. Then in an email sent to me, which you have in your package, dated January 14, confirmed on January 15, they said they had solved the accessibility issues and they had a way to save the tree. At the tree planning committee, they reversed, said it had to come down because of the width. When asked for proof, they said their safety and security protocols prevented them from showing schematics, but when challenged, they realized that they had shown schematics when they had tried to take down a tree at 1902 Beacon at the air crossing. There's just a lot of moving parts here, and I don't know who's right and who's wrong. But I think with a little imagination, they could save this tree. They don't need to cut in on 3 sides. And I think they ought to test a little bit better to see whether the trains can go by. I will just point out in my last second here that this is the easy part. The harder part is going to get when you get to Fairbanks and Brandon Hall.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Friedman.
If I could say 10 seconds more.
If we allow 10 seconds for you, we have to allow 10 seconds for everyone, Mr. Friedman. I apologize.
And we all have your comments.
Well, because you're going to have flooding at Brandon Hall and the other.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Dick Benka. Dick, I'm promoting you now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dick Benka, town meeting member from Precinct 14. You've received a memorandum and some attachments from me, and I thank you for looking at those. Tonight is the first time we've heard anything about cutting into the roots of the pin oak on multiple sides. It's also the first time we heard the issue with the undercarriage being articulated in this fashion, supported by a photo taken at night, with no explanation of the design standards for the cart that was used, no explanation for the assumptions made regarding its height, its width, the speed at which it was supposedly run, whether it was designed to account for sway or no sway. There simply has been no documentation for the alleged encroachment on the tree based on that cart. The board should require proof of the alleged tree encroachment with schematics and documentation with an appropriate vehicular dynamic envelope for a train slowly entering the station. What we've seen tonight is documentation of the undercarriage, but nothing relating it to the pin oak, nothing relating it to the route of the pin oak. We've just seen diagrams of the Type 9 and Type 10 undercarriages. What can be done to mitigate the other impacts on routes that we've heard about for the first time tonight? Absolutely no mention of that previously. What would be the impact if we removed a couple of inches from a route and let the rest of it remain? And finally, I urge you to consider the proper allocation of ongoing tree maintenance costs as this goes forward. Accessibility should definitely be implemented. There's no question about that. But a decades-old, perhaps century-old healthy tree should not be cut down on the basis of undocumented statements and as a matter of convenience. Such action should be fact-based, with documentation, with an explanation of the assumptions for that documentation, and only as a matter of necessity. Let's see that documentation. Let's see the schematics. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dick. The next speaker is Sean Lynn Jones. Sean, you've been promoted.
Thank you very much. I'm Sean Lynn Jones. I am president of the Brookline Green Space Alliance. I'm also a town meeting member from Precinct 1 and a resident of 53 Monmouth Street, and a frequent rider of the Green Line C branch. So I'm quite familiar with many of these stations and issues. I want to begin by thanking a lot of people. I'll try to do it as quickly as possible, but really thanks to the MBTA for their time, for their presentations, and for their willingness to answer so many questions. Thanks also to the tree planting committee and to town staff, particularly our new town arborist, Jack Schleifer, for what they've all done on this. And thanks to the select board for asking some great questions tonight. The Green Space Alliance has been concerned about this project for a long time. I forwarded you a copy of a letter we sent in August 2024. This is a great project that will benefit all riders. It's not just a matter of ADA legal compliance. It's a better rider experience for everyone who uses the C branch. But there are three key issues that you need to address before you vote to approve the tree removal. First, can you minimize the tree loss? And in particular, is there any way of addressing the concerns about the pin oak, which I will not repeat, but which I share? Second, are you assured that steps have been taken by the MBTA to minimize or prevent accidental and inadvertent tree loss during the demolition and construction? Because there are always construction vehicles that accidentally hit trees or excavations that accidentally hit roots. And I hope that our town arborist, Jack Schleifer, is going to be informed of those precautions and can vet them and share those plans that the MBTA has with you. And finally, we need to make sure that the tree planting program proposed by the MBTA is going to work. And again, I urge you to consult with our town arborist, who I know has already done a lot of work to vet at least that program for Tappan and Englewood stations. But I also want to step back and take a look at the larger context. Some of you attended a talk on walkable Brookline a few days ago. The speaker, Jeff Speck, emphasized that trees fight pollution, climate change, heat islands, prevent flooding, promote physical and mental health, prevent crime, help businesses, and so many other things. But he pointed out that they're often, maybe always, the most valuable but least valued aspect of a committee. We've been losing tree canopy, and now we propose to lose more trees along our main street, along a densely populated area where we have heat islands, and through an Olmsted design landscape. I hope that we can act to minimize this loss and not approve this tree removal without knowing all of the offsetting factors and mitigation.
That concludes
Thank you
your
very
time.
much.
The next speaker is Elisa Plazanja.
Elisa Plazanja, Precinct 8. Let me first say that all of us support making our public transportation more accessible. No one is questioning the end goal here. But it's hard to dispute the fact that the tree loss caused by this work conflicts directly with our urban forest climate resiliency master plan and will have a detrimental impact on Brookline's climate resiliency. And what I've heard this evening is a lot of greenwashing and renderings that suggest that we'll magically have shade within a few years through some replantings. We won't, and all you need to do to know that is look at the B line, where this work has already been done, to see that there is no shade to be had. Mature trees are essential to a livable Brookline. They provide shade, help lower ambient temperature, and mitigate the heat island effect. They remove pollutants, produce oxygen, absorb stormwater, and provide much needed habitat for non-human life on which our own survival depends. Furthermore, mature trees cannot simply be replaced by replanting, as their climate benefits take decades to accrue. Decades. Most ironically, I'll note that people with mobility issues are often among our most vulnerable and those most susceptible to the perils of climate change. And the children in the strollers that this project seeks to accommodate will live with the consequences of the climate that is being damaged by removing these trees. I appreciate that the MBTA has given consideration to trying to save trees and that some of the tree loss from this project seems unavoidable. But we need to be honest about the very real impact that these tree removals will have on the town. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Carlos Reduejo. Carlos, I'm promoting you now. Carlos, you've been promoted.
Thank you, Tiffany. And thank you, members of the select board. I'll just summarize my comments since a lot of them have already been mentioned. But I think before the MBTA, before the select board votes on this item, I think we need to have a complete list of trees that are not listed under these projects, the station projects that will be also removed because of the type 10 subway car, new dimensions, so that we can have the big picture of how many trees are going to be impacted. Between Tappan and Washington Square, there are several trees outside of the train stations that are at a very similar distance than the pin oak that we've been talking about. And I'll just focus my comments on this one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlos. That concludes the individuals who signed up in advance in the meeting. If you are online and wish to speak during this public hearing on the MBTA project, please raise your hand using the raise the hand feature. Or if in the room, please make your presence known at this time. Brian Kane.
Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian Kane, I have the great honor to chair the Transportation Board, and I just want to be clear, I'm speaking for myself and not the board, which will meet tomorrow on this subject. Very quickly, this project represents a huge win for the town of Brookline, and I want to be very clear. The process here has worked, and it's worked incredibly well. from what was originally proposed to what is before you today and what will be before you in the future is much better than it was. We have got the T to move significantly on a number of things. Moving the diesel generators was like moving a mountain. Mitigating the number of parking spaces lost has been a big fight, and we are winning. And this project tries to take down the least amount of trees absolutely possible. Moving the platform 100 feet this way, 100 feet this way will result in the loss of more trees. Trust me when I say we have gone over this many, many times, and we are trying to do every single thing we can to save this tree and every single tree along Beacon Street. All of them are treasures. We don't want to do this. We don't want to take down trees. None of this is being done in a vacuum. We are trying to find the path of least resistance here in every single way possible, including going around trees. Unfortunately, the roots of this tree are pushing up the asphalt. The new Type 10 trains are wider. It's a question of physics. There will be a conflict. I want to associate myself very, very much with the remarks of Chairman Jim Lee. The benefits that will come from this project are legion. The streetcar stations that are out there right now, which is a strip of yellow paint with asphalt, are simply not sufficient for the 21st century. What we will be getting with railings on the back to protect us from the cars on Beacon Street, signage, audio-visual, is a significant increase that we cannot look in the mouth. With respect to climate change, I understand, and I totally understand, but let's also not forget 30% of the causes of climate change come from transportation. The single best way that we can help reduce climate change and its effects in this region is to put more people on public transportation and get them out of cars, even electric cars. This program will help bring about more riders to the C branch. I believe it. I know it. And that will do a heck of a lot more to mitigate the effects of climate change than a single tree. I wish we didn't have to lose the tree. I really do. Trust me, this process would be so much easier if we didn't have to lose the tree. Unfortunately, we have tried everything we can do, and it's there. And also, with respect to the request for additional information and more schematics, more drawings, I would urge the board not to get lost in analysis paralysis. There is always going to be a demand for more information. We will never have perfect information. That doesn't exist. You all know that. This project, in my opinion, represents the single best option available after looking at many, many permutations to save as many trees as possible, to mitigate to save as many parking spaces as available, and to mitigate the effects of climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Abby Swain. Abby, I'm promoting you now.
See if I can do this. Can you hear me now?
Yes, but very softly.
Oh dear. Let me try to ameliorate that. Let's see. Where's my control? Let me just. Can you let me just?
We can hear you. Just if
amplify.
you speak up, perhaps.
All right, sorry. First of all, I want to congratulate Jim Lee and Brian Kane on truly excellent remarks. I think we are in danger here of missing the forest for the trees. Please excuse the analogy. And I'm a little bit ashamed of Brookline in what seems to be our hubris in second guessing the MBTA engineers who have worked extremely hard on this and running the risk of putting an obsession with a pin oak and some other charismatic trees over the interests of our fellow humans who have mobility and other disability challenges. As others have said, the MBTA is under a 20-year-old judicial consent decree to make their system accessible. It's more than a concept, it's more than an abstraction, it's the law. It's being monitored and it really needs to show progress or, as the MBTA has pointed out, face penalties. Currently, not enough of our stations on the C line are wheelchair accessible, actually a minority. People like my 30-year-old son who's lived in Brookline all his life and began using a wheelchair at age 24 due to a skiing accident, loves to patronize businesses all along Beacon Street, but must wheel long distances in whatever weather to board a train. Imagine, for example, if there were no stations that you could use between Cleveland Circle and Washington Square. That would seem absurd. Everywhere on the C line, as others have said, platforms are so narrow that it's hard to get to an accessible door, even at accessible stations. Ambulatory elderly people have trouble getting on and off, which reduces their options and slows service. Maneuvering strollers, carts, and luggage is very tricky. We got into this mess because as a result of the first Beacon Street redesign project, more space was given to moving and parked vehicles than perhaps was judicious. That squeezed both transit and trees. And the MBTA has inherited this legacy of a constrained corridor, and it makes what they're up against extremely difficult. If we make this impossible for the T, they may have to resort to eliminating stops, which they did allude to. So the MBTA system-wide accessibility program is making deliberate and steady progress toward making the whole system accessible. These staff are committed to equity, as they should be. Increasingly, I see wheelchair users riding the T. Some are students patronizing our local universities. Do we really want, as a town, to be a big drag on equity? MassDOT controls the public way on Beacon Street largely because it's an essential corridor, not only for us, but for all who visit and pass through. Even though the town seems to hold sway via property rights on
Thank
some
you,
of the
Abby.
intended
That concludes the
footprint,
time allotted.
it
Are
would be
there any?
cheap to abuse our leverage.
Thank you, Abby. I do have to cut you off now. Are there any other individuals who wish to speak at this time during the public hearing? If so, again, please raise your hand using the raise the hand feature or make your presence known in the room. Okay, it looks like no one else is indicating their desire to speak.
Okay, thank you, Tiffany. So next we'll hear from the select board, any questions or comments they have based on what we've heard. Yes, John.
Just for starters, is the intent that we then proceed to take a vote tonight, or did I hear a reference to they're going to be coming back at the end of this month for a vote?
We're going to vote tonight to either affirm or deny the decision of the tree planting committee.
Okay, so that
And
vote
then,
is coming
there are
tonight.
other issues that will happen at later meetings.
Yeah, okay. So if I may, just let me make a couple of comments. I appreciate everything we've heard tonight. Even what we've heard tonight that we didn't hear at the meeting of the tree planting committee and should have heard at the meeting of the tree planting committee. And even though, some of what we heard tonight doesn't 100% answer the question, really, why is the MBTA so disinclined to save this tree? And that's really what's going on. They could save the tree, but they've basically shifted from the width of the new cars was going to cause the new cars to actually, I mean, they didn't come right out and say, come in contact with the tree, but they pointed to how close the tree was, to the tracks, and led people to think there's a problem, just like we had further down the line, by the way, which no one hesitated to say yes to removing a tree that was actually up against the rail of the tracks. But it isn't that at this stop. It clearly isn't that. And people didn't understand how could the MBTA saying that say that these new cars are going to be so much wider that they're actually going to run the risk of coming into contact with the base of this tree. That made no sense to anybody. They went to a lot of trouble to sort of knock down that scenario. And then it turns out that's not the scenario that the MBTA is using to justify not saving the tree. It turns out that the scenario is that maybe the same wider track underneath the 10 car, it will cut into the roots of the tree. I don't really buy that. I don't think most people buy that. It's kind of very improbable. I mean, if you look at the track right now, there is not, anything that would intrude. Obviously, there can't be on a carriage underneath the Type 10 cars within the track bed. No, it just doesn't exist. To think that there's something under the Type 10 cars that actually would cut through what's underneath the car to the root of a tree, I can't even picture it. So we come back to, well, then why are they persisting in not wanting to save this tree? And then they begin to basically lean on what is actually their best argument. And I don't know why they didn't just start and end with that, which is that it will require a lot of work to create an accessible platform and save the tree at the same time. And it would be a huge challenge. It would add a lot of expense to this project. And it might not even save the tree. And even the most ardent of people who are praying for there to be a way to save this tree, and that includes me, I think would have to concede that once you start doing a lot of excavation around the root system of a tree, you're running the risk that that tree won't survive. And we had, you know, an unfortunate experience with that on Hammond Street within the past year, where all of us who loved a particular red oak on Hammond Street that was nearby a site of an excavation taking place for some new housing that's being built, you know, came to the defense of that tree, got an assessment that said the tree was salvageable. God bless him, Tom Brady, our former tree warden, opted, and the tree planning committee opted to deny the developer the permission to remove that tree from the nearby sidewalk and street on the, you know, hopes that it actually should be salvageable. And by the way, they said at the time, there can be substantial cutting into the root base of that tree without the tree dying. Unfortunately, the tree did die within the next year. If the MBTA does not want to take on the challenge of saving this tree, then no matter how hard we try to force them to take on the challenge of saving this tree, I don't think they're going to do a very good job of it. And I'm sorry to say that, guys, but you know, for all of the wonderful benefits of this project and all of your flexibility in you know, fine tuning it to the requests of people in Brookline, at this point, it's been kind of a challenge to figure out from one meeting to the next, you know, whether you can verify all of the stuff you're saying. But when it comes to, do you have a credible case that the extreme measures that would have to be taken during excavation to save this tree and create a fully accessible platform that is of the standard of the other platforms that you're developing along the sea line, you know, you have a credible case that wouldn't be easily done. It would add a lot of expense, and it might not succeed. And so tonight, having come to this meeting convinced that I was going to vote to save the tree, but hearing in you know, very, very clear, undeniable terms, the importance of this, the extreme importance of this to those who are disabled, the extreme importance of this to those who want a better, more up-to-date and you know, finished sort of a set of station platforms along the sea line. And having seen the work that was done at St. Mary's, which I will say I think is a credit to the MBTA, and if the rest of the work they do is of that quality, I think we'll be in good shape. We might not save trees such as this one, but we'll have a substantially improved sea line, and we will have access that is long overdue. So I'm willing to say that I came here to vote against the removal of, or the project as is, unless the tree were saved. I'm not sure it can be saved, and I want to back our tree warden. I want to back our disability commission and others, and concede that sometimes things we wish for we can't get, and it looks like getting the saving of this tree is not something we're going to get out of the MBTA.
Thank you. Michael?
Thank you for your comments. First of all, I want to thank Brian Kane for coming up and speaking so eloquently about the process and how the process has unfolded and worked across the town. And secondly, I would like to thank the tree committee for both holding a public hearing, taking in all of the information that was brought forth, and coalescing that information both into an understanding at the moment of the information that you had at hand, and also for providing the conditional approval that included the questions that the MBTA was able to, in between that meeting and this one, research and provide answers clearly and with additional facts and information to the benefit of both the public and the edification of the select board. And thirdly, I would like to thank the MBTA for taking the time to respond to those questions, for getting the additional schematics, refining their explanation of the conflict around that particular pin oak tree in such a way that it clearly showed not only the challenges with the new D10 trains, but a more thorough understanding of the needs of a tree in order to save it, the risks to the community if the tree is unable to be saved but is left in place, and potentially falling either on the tracks or on the road, or heaven forbid on a passenger on the T. And this process of additional information unfolding over the course of these hearings, I believe, is exactly what we should be looking for as we are reviewing these complex projects. At some point, we have to decide as a select board to make a decision, and I am comfortable with the foregoing the previous meeting of the tree planning committee, the additional information that the MPTA has provided, and I look forward to the improvements, the additional tree plantings, and over time, the additional shade trees from the newly planted trees that we will get from this project. So thank you.
Any other comments? Paul?
Just briefly, I want to thank Abby for her comments and kind of grounding us in what this is all about. I live on the sea line, just off it. I take it frequently. I am a parent of 2 younger children. When they were in wheelchairs, I've struggled trying to get them on and off the train. But you know, that's the least of my concerns. I've been on the train, the Green Line, on the Sea Line, where someone in a wheelchair had to get on the train and get off. It was dehumanizing, the process. It's not a simple effort to get. They have to be carried, lugged, tipped. It was unbelievable what I witnessed about a month ago with a young person who was in a wheelchair. I've seen an older individual that had serious mobility issues. The train was stopped. It took quite a bit of time to get the person on. Again, dehumanizing, just what it took to get this person onto the sea line. You know, I value those people. I value the children. I value those with disabilities. All the barriers that they have to live within our society that we take for granted, I value them more than the pin oak. It's just what it comes down to. I value them more than whatever efforts we could make, John, to save the pin oak. And in defense of the MBTA, I don't think they're saying, "Oh, we just don't want to do the work." It's a very poor investment of anybody's effort to try to save the pin oak, because it's going to be a failure. The train's going to hit it. The thing's going to die. We've heard it from our own arborists. I appreciate the effort, the analysis. I know, you know, Brookline is very different than any other community that the MBTA has to deal with. You have no other community like us. Is there any other community that you had to go and have a public hearing about trees, or it doesn't exist. And I know that we're unique. And one of the reasons why that uniqueness serves us well is it's because we're passionate about protecting Brookline. But there is a point where we have to elevate caring for people more than a tree, because you can replant a tree. You can plant more trees. You can't replace the person. So I'm looking forward to supporting uphold the decision of the tree planting committee. And I'm looking forward to each and every station coming before me so that I can support this project. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'll say a few things. In life in general, it's always a balancing act. We have to balance our concern for the climate with a concern for people. In this case, losing trees does have an impact on the climate, but in Brookline, that impact's pretty small. The impact on the climate of expanding public transportation, which I think this project would do, still very small, but it's a lot larger. Balancing those two things, in my opinion, really tells us that given that the town has worked very hard with the MBTA to minimize the number of trees that we lose, the impact of this project on increasing the availability of public transportation to more people is much, much more significant to me. And also, we can't ignore what I think Paul said, and that is, it's really dehumanizing. It's humiliating for people with disabilities, and those disabilities don't have to be someone's in a wheelchair for life. It could be, I had a hip replacement recently, and I was disabled for a while. You go skiing, you break your leg, you're disabled for a while. And to the extent that our public transportation is not accommodating people in all of those situations, we're really failing a lot of people. So that tells you how I'm gonna vote. Any comments from anyone else? David?
My thinking is similar to yours and Paul's. I felt that Brian Kane spoke very well to the issue in a very comprehensive manner. I really appreciated your remarks. I asked a lot of questions specifically around the trees, and that I felt that the MBTA has done due diligence around addressing the concerns that have been raised by the public. Similarly, I felt that our arborist came very well prepared to answer questions. So I think the work has been done. Efforts were made to save this tree. It's not a viable situation where we can really do that. And ultimately, we need to be serving people. And as you said, elevating the importance of human beings over any single tree. That being said, there's a lot more than one single tree that could be impacted. So I do look forward to seeing what the rest of the design will look like beyond the two stations that have been presented today. I am hopeful that damage to our tree canopy can be mitigated. It sounds like there is some flexibility. There already have been some thoughtful decisions made about merging certain stations, relocating platforms somewhat. So I think the work is being done to try to balance all of these considerations. But ultimately, we want to be ADA compliant. We want to make sure that people passing through our Beacon Street corridor, disabled or not, have an enhanced experience in riding the T so that it attracts more users, and that will mitigate climate change on a much broader scale than the loss of any particular tree.
Okay, with that, I'd like to make a motion, and that is I move to affirm the decision of the Tree Planting Committee to approve the MBTA's plan with respect to the removal of trees.
At Englewood and Tappan.
I'm sorry, at Englewood and Tappan. Okay. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Aye.
Michael Rubenstein.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Thank you, everyone. For
I was just saying, can I comment real quick?
Sure.
Just we can on a couple of cleanup items. One, I wanted to thank very much the MBTA for their responsiveness and participation in this public process. It hasn't always been the case that the MBTA has been a responsive partner to us. And this, I hope, is the beginning of something better in terms of the cross coordination, your willingness to be responsive to residents' concerns, your willingness to come here with additional information that residents have requested. That's a change in tone, and it's very much appreciated. I will say we continue to hear good things from the T's leadership, And where sometimes that relationship breaks down is at the project management level, where leaders are very good at saying, we have good intentions, we want to be well connected with the T. And then we hear, for example, it's not the C branch, it's the D branch. We hear, the week of, oh, we're going to, be shutting this down for 24 hours, et cetera, et cetera. There's work to be done there. And I just hope that this good experience is a step forward on all levels, that we can continue to be connecting at the project manager to project manager level and have that sort of connection that we need in order to make sure that these deliberative public processes can go through and we can reach the right outcome. And, as Brian said, go through the give and take that's necessary to get to a better place. I want to thank the DPW staff that have been working hard on this, not just our urban forestry manager. Thank you so much for trial by fire. But I also want to recognize Amy Engels, who is departing town service in October. She has served as a
What?
What? Wait a minute.
who is
Can't sneak that past us.
I didn't.
He didn't.
I didn't sneak it past. But I want to thank Amy for her tireless service to this community. She's deeply embedded in this, a part of this community, deeply embedded in it, and has really done a huge amount of work. It is extremely hard to work on transportation in Brookline. There are so many stakeholders. Brian is cracking up back there. There are so many stakeholders and so many difficult things. And we are an incredibly publicly oriented community. We have these long deliberative processes for a reason. They get to the best outcomes for the community. And Amy has really worked hard to make that happen. I want to thank her for her service and thank for all the work that she's done. Lastly, I just want to bring up something that Mr. Benka brought up, which is important because it is an issue that I don't think we talked about, which is this issue of maintenance and upkeep along the line. And I'm happy to, in my conversations with the commissioner, just talking through, we've been hoping to get an agreement with the MBTA for the management and upkeep of the space around the C branch for years, because the MBTA doesn't necessarily have the resources to come out and clean up those lines. And so one of the big complaints we hear from businesses and residents around is the tracks are dirty, space is dirty, it's not being kept up well. What can you do about it? And we have to say, technically that's not ours, we can't touch it. With this in hand, what we can do is take those steps towards, we already have people out there. So the additional cost to us in terms of time and management is, well, not zero, is not overwhelming, but the benefit that we gain in terms of having these maintenance and upkeep agreements is significant in terms of the benefit to local business and local residents. So I do take Mr. Benka's point. It is an important one, but the trade-offs there, we have evaluated them, and I think they are very overall beneficial for the community.
Thank you. Okay, with that, this item is ended.
Did you close the public hearing?
Did I close it? Tiffany, did I close the public hearing? I thought I did, but I'll close it again. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Do people want to take a break, or do you want to just slosh on? Pardon me?
Right.
5-minute break would be great.
Okay, let's take a 5-minute break. Go ahead.
You're all set. So many things. So many things to be said about.
Yes.
Oh, yes, I said most of them in the last 2 minutes. Some of them.
When we were building the house, junior houses, they got us into a situation. How many millions of dollars did that cost us?
And it's still, I mean, when I came here, we were still fighting.
Yeah.
It was a totally different, I mean, I will say the relationship is markedly improved.
Yeah.
And that is good.
But
There are,
here.
Next item on our agenda is school EV charging and rates. Question of accepting Mass EVIP grant in the amount of $48,493.20 for the installation of an electric vehicle charging station at Baker School and establishing a charging fee of 35 cents per kilowatt hour for the Baker School and Driscoll School EV charging stations. So who's going to present there? It looks like Alexandra.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Alexandra Vecchio, Director of Sustainability and Natural Resources. I also have with me this evening Sam Downs, who is our Deputy Director of Engineering and has been working on our EV charging program with me, and specifically on these projects in particular. So this evening, we have two items before you that are related to one another. One is the acceptance of the Mass EVIP charging grant, and this is for the installation of two stations, which each include 2 ports at Baker School. These are high-end level 2 charging stations, and this has been reviewed and accepted by the school committee. And then in addition, we are also looking for approval to establish a rate of 35 cents per kilowatt hour for charging at our 2 schools that will eventually have EV charging station, or in the case of Driscoll already do, and to ensure that those are aligned with one another. So that includes both Baker School and Driscoll School, which already has charging stations. Overall, across the town at our different charging stations, the rate is 25 cents per kilowatt hour or 35 cents, depending on the location. And in this case, we are encouraging that the schools have the same rate at all of their locations where they are collecting fees. Last year, town meeting did vote to establish an electric vehicle revolving fund. And so the monies collected from the charging stations across the entire charging network go into that fund. And then that fund helps supports the cost of electricity, ongoing maintenance, our cloud service management plans. So to help ensure that the stations themselves are self-funded. So with that, the charging grant that we were able to procure through Mass EVIP, unfortunately, is for level 2 charging stations, but it is for the higher end level 2 charging stations. At this time, that is the only option that we have available to us. And so these charging stations will be available for school use during the day. We did coordinate with the school principal at a few different sites to figure out which would be the most appropriate to start with, and really looked comprehensively at which locations would be most appropriate when we were thinking about our overall EV charging network. So right now, we have fewer stations in South Brookline, and so felt that both because of the interest by the school, the number of vehicles there by school staff that are electric vehicles that could utilize the stations during the day, and then the possibility of these being utilized by the general neighborhood population, visitors to the playground, to the nearby tennis courts, to the Deep Lake Horse Sanctuary, would be a benefit overall to the community. So with that, I'm happy to, I'll turn it over to Sam to see what I inevitably missed, and then happy to take any questions that you all have.
Alexandra, I don't think you missed anything, but happy to answer any questions that the select board has as well.
Paul.
Yep, thank you, the both of you. So it's a level 2 charging station. Is the 48,000 covering the full cost for the level 2? And what would be the difference to go to level 3?
So it is a high-end level 2. So a standard level 2 station is approximately 7 kilowatts of electricity per hour. These stations that we are proposing are actually 19 kilowatts per hour, so 3 times faster than a standard level 2. And that comes out to be about a third of the speed of a level 3. Like a standard level 3 is around 62 kilowatts. So this is 19. So it's as high as you can go before converting to direct current, DC. And in terms of scale of cost, this level 2 project is costing approximately $100,000. Alexandra might have the exact number maybe, but 48,000 is being covered by the EVIP grant, and then the remaining balance is being covered by DPW utilizing funds that we actually were reimbursements from previous EV charging projects. So we are reinvesting money received as reimbursements to EV charging projects to help further the schools project. And then to tackle the level 3 question, in this situation, which is true for many locations, there's actually just not the electrical capacity to handle the amount of demand that would be needed for a level 3 station. It would require significant electrical upgrades at the school, and would ultimately ballpark number take our project from $100,000 upwards of $400,000.
Okay, that's helpful, Sam. Thank you.
David.
So my understanding with EVIP grants is that you don't get the payment up front. It's essentially a reimbursement. Is that correct?
It is a reimbursement. There actually have been projects where we have received the money prior to the completion of the project. So I can't tell you why that happened. But it is true that we normally will set up a reimbursement account with Comptroller and use the money that's in it to pay, and then reimburse the account that money is drawn from once the payment is received from EVIP. But they are very timely in their payments.
Now, did you also explore opportunities with Green Communities grants? Because I think you can't lump more than one together, and I'm just wondering whether Green Communities typically offers more. Would they have covered a full charging station?
You're right. So Green Communities is something that the town has done before. It actually helps support one of the chargers that's outside of town hall. And you're correct, any grant from Green Communities is actually deducted from the EVIP amount. You can actually get more money from EVIP because it covers up to 60% of both the cost of construction and the equipment, and Green Communities is focused primarily on on just the station itself. So we only received about $7,000 previously from Green Communities, which covers the cost of the station only, when the real costs of the project are in the construction, and that's how we're able to get up to 60% of the cost covered by EVIP. So more money.
So for this project, the total cost is $82,980 and $48,493 of that is being covered by EVIP.
Michael?
Thank you. I have a question about the 35 cent per kilowatt hour fee. I'm wondering, first of all, how much of that 35 cents goes to the vendor who is supplying or doing the financing, or is it GreenSpot or ChargePoint?
So all of our stations are ChargePoint that are town owned and operated. You're right, we do have some GreenSpot stations in town, but going forward, ChargePoint. And so the answer is 10%. And so we've considered that 10%, or we've included that 10% to ensure that the cost that's being set appropriately covers the cost of electricity, the cost of the annual cloud service programs that we have, warranty plans that we have, and that 10%, the 10% of the fee.
Okay, and the 35 cents covers all of those things?
Yes, that's
and
correct.
Do you have any understanding of how those costs may change over time that would require increasing that fee?
Great question. This was asked 2 years ago when we were first establishing a fee for the first time in Brookline. Previously, the stations had been free. And at the time, we had worked with Charlie Young to determine what rate the town was paying at multiple stations. And since November of 2023, we've been able to get a holistic look at all the stations, and we understand that certain stations that are lower demand might not offset the bills that are there, but then we have stations that are in really high demand, and at the end we are net positive. Again, our goal is not to make money with these stations, but it is to come out in the positive and be able to use this money for maintenance and upkeep. And since November of 2023, we have net positive every month since then. And that was using the 25 cent fee that we established at the time.
Thank you.
John?
I will just add to that, Michael, that we do track the costs of electricity usage at the stations. And then we also have contractual agreements for the maintenance, warranties, and cloud services programs that we look at and can project out over multiple years. And so as we add more stations and get higher usage data and more information on each of the stations, we are collecting all of that information so that we can do a comprehensive look across the entire system. So as Sam noted, we're really looking at the usage and benefit across all of our EV charging stations as opposed to just one single location.
Thank you.
John?
Yeah, thanks very much. This item under discussion is about, basically just one charging station at Baker School and rates, and absolutely, a good thing. I'm glad to see this going forward. But if you don't mind, I want to ask a couple of questions about, broadly speaking, excuse me, our efforts to add charging stations around town and to monitor charging stations around town to sort of assess the level of usage of the charging stations. And the reason this is on my mind is that a very reputable blog on transportation issues called Streets Blog, Streets Blog Massachusetts, is individualized from Massachusetts, had a provocative piece today about how there's a huge gap between the goals that were set for Massachusetts in 2020 in terms of the number of vehicles on the road that would be EVs. And as one of the consequences of that failure to achieve the numbers of EVs that were set out in these goals is that in some cases, the charging stations are getting ahead of the demand for the charging stations. And so I'm just wondering, as a general matter, how do we track that in Brookline to make sure that, for example, we're not creating a situation in which parking stations are going begging and gas-powered vehicles are circling the block because they can't find a parking space?
Yeah, I mean, great question. We do, I'll go first with the utilization. So this was a question that's come up before, and we presented to ZAB a couple of months ago that demonstrates that it definitely varies by stations, but for the town, the town-owned stations, we looked at every day of the week, 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And our most well-utilized stations was, I believe, just about 70% utilized. So, if you think about how frequently a parking space is utilized, maybe it's around the same 70%, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And of course, that utilization did go down to, in the 40%, 30%, but those are also some of our newer stations that have only come online in the last couple of months. So we've seen, we've seen really strong utilization of 60 to 70% of our stations, like I said, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. I'm sure people will still say, oh, I went to Center Street East and the 2 EV spots weren't in use, but the data shows otherwise. It shows that they're getting used 65 to 70% of the time, and they only make up 2 of the maybe 100 spots in Center Street East, just as one example.
Yeah.
And then
the example that stands out from ESAM is Fuller Street, and I just wonder if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, Fuller's, so Green Spot are the stations that are in the Fuller Street, Kent Webster, and Kent Webster lots. There is a fast charger from Green Spot on Beacon Street, but I know that the locations of concern are Fuller Street and Kent and Webster, and that agreement predates me, but at the time there was a push to install EV charging stations back in 2019, and there definitely appears to be a surplus of stations in those locations, and the rates are also higher than the towns. So that combination of a large number of charging stations and a higher price is definitely not going to lead to demand. And we are obligated to, we will be revisiting the signage around those stations in January, when the end of our three-year obligation ends with the state for them being signed as EV while charging only. So that will certainly be a conversation, but based off of the utilization data, it does appear that those 2 lots were overbuilt.
And so there is a remedy.
There is a remedy, and that's under that's under our division and the Transportation Board's jurisdiction to remove the sign, to potentially remove the signs that say EV charging or EV parking while charging only. That's just one, that is a potential remedy, and something that I'll be working with Alexandra and our team closely on as we approach the January 2026 3-year timeframe.
Great. I like that idea. Okay, thanks.
And I'll just add, that as Sam mentioned, those were Green Spot charging stations, some of the first that were installed here in Brookline. And since then, we've really looked at how we're siting our charging stations moving forward. And so both the number of stations that we have in that one lot, and the agreement that we have with Green Spot, as well as how we look at comprehensively other charging stations in nearby vicinity. Those are all factors that we take into consideration. Part of the reason why Baker School was selected of the different schools that we looked at Brookline, was we were looking at the larger charging picture. So just to say that we take a more comprehensive view now than we did at the start of the installation of EV charging, 6 years ago, and that is absolutely a consideration for any of the additional stations that we were to add.
Okay. Unless there are any other questions, I'd like to move the question. I'd like to put them together. So I move approval of the accepting the Mass EVIP grant in the amount of $48,493.20 for the installation of charging station at Baker School and establishing a charging fee of 35 cents per kilowatt hour for the Baker School and Driscoll School EV charging stations. Anything else anyone want to add? Nothing. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Aye.
Michael Rubenstein.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Next, warrant articles, a public hearing. Warrant articles for the upcoming special town meeting. Warrant Article 1, approval of unpaid bills of a prior fiscal year, and Warrant Article 16, resolution to encourage bringing a professional women's basketball franchise to Boston, not Brookline. So let's start off with Warrant Article 1. I assume that there are no unpaid bills, or are there?
Good evening, Melissa Goff, Deputy Town Administrator. Happy to report that yes, there are no unpaid bills.
Okay. This is a public hearing, so Tiffany, open up the public hearing.
Yes, now that the chair has opened up the public hearing, there are no individuals who signed up in advance to speak on warrant Article 1 related to unpaid bills. If there's anyone who wishes to speak online, please raise your hand using the raise the hand feature, or if in the room, please make your presence known. Okay, we have one individual in the room, 12 online, and no one is indicating their desire to speak on
Okay,
this warrant
let's
article.
Close the hearing. Do we need to vote on this since we don't
You
have
can
any?
go ahead and vote no action if you want.
Okay. I move no action on warrant Article 1, unpaid bills. All in favor, John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Aye.
Michael Rubenstein.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Next, warrant Article 16, resolution to encourage bringing a professional women's basketball franchise to Boston. I see Mr. Bernstein is in the audience. You want to tell us why you filed this warrant article?
Yes, thank you. I am Michael Bernstein, town meeting member from Precinct 12, also a library trustee, but that has nothing to do with this. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to explain to you why I filed this warrant article. I come before you tonight to present warrant Article 16, which again is a resolution asking that Brookline join Boston in endorsing the relocation of a WNBA team to our region. As the text of the article notes, Massachusetts is the birthplace of basketball, and Boston is already home to one of the most storied franchises in sports history, the Celtics. But we have a glaring absence: professional women's basketball. At a moment when women's sports are reaching unprecedented levels of visibility, attendance, and sponsorship support, this time is right for Boston to welcome the WNBA. Why should Brookline weigh in? Because this is about more than sports. It's about opportunity, it's about representation, it's about community. Our residents, particularly our young people, deserve to see women competing at the highest level in the same arenas where men do. We know from research and experience that when young people, especially girls, see athletes look like them excelling on the biggest stage, it fosters confidence, ambition, and a sense of belonging. A WNBA team in Boston would not just play games, would become part of the fabric of our civic life. Think of the educational community programs that teams often sponsor, programs that would reach schools, after-school programs here in the Boston area and even here in Brookline. We also know that this isn't just wishful thinking. The Connecticut Sun, which at the moment is the only WNBA team in all of New England, has twice sold out TD Garden for games played in Boston. This tells us that there is a fan base here and it is enthusiastic. And this infrastructure already exists. We have TD Garden, Agganis Arena, other facilities that can easily host WNBA games. And with the Boston City Council already on record in support of a WNBA franchise, Brookline has an opportunity to stand with them, amplifying the message that the greater Boston area is ready. Passing this resolution won't bring a team here on its own, but it would send a powerful signal. It tells the WNBA and potential investors that Brookline, like Boston, is a community that values women's sports, equity, and opportunity. It tells our residents that we support positive role models for our kids. And it tells the broader sports world that Greater Boston is ready to add another chapter to its proud basketball legacy. I hope the Select Board will recommend favorable action. Together, we can help bring professional women's basketball to Boston, and in doing so, we can help write the next great story in our region's rich sports history. I welcome any questions.
Paul.
Yep. Michael, thank you. Thank you for waiting so long.
Yes.
Patient guy. So I know that this is based on what the Boston City Council did, and it talks about relocation because there's an opportunity they may be looking for a new home. But what about expansion?
So we are in the warrant article. I do mention the Connecticut Sun twice.
Yeah.
But the warrant article actual resolution would also be fine with expansion.
Okay, because the words read fully endorsing the potential relocation of a WNBA franchise. Can we add relocation or expansion?
Yes, I would be more than happy to do that. In fully endorsing potential relocation or expansion or
If
something
that's
like
within
that.
Scope.
Addition.
Yeah, we'd have to check with the moderator. He's usually pretty generous on.
We could change relocation to addition, endorsing the potential addition of a WNBA franchise to Boston.
You could delete RE, just have it be location, endorse the location.
Oh, yes.
It's a little linguistically awkward, but that is technically removable.
But you get my point.
I get your point entirely.
There is demand, maybe there's someone who wants to go expand, and I'm sure that WNBA would love to expand if possible.
It is, there's a difficult question going on here. I don't know if the Select Board has heard, but the Connecticut Sun did go up for sale, and there was a deal, there is a possible deal to bring them to Boston, but right now the WNBA is sort of standing in their way. And they're talking about how they would rather move the team to Houston, which would completely eliminate any WNBA team in all of New England. So my personal feeling is that I would like the Connecticut Sun to stay where they are in Uncasville and have a new team in Boston. But if our choices are going to end up being Boston or Houston, Texas already has a team. I know where I would want a WNBA team to be located.
David?
My understanding of the issue regarding relocation versus expansion is that the WNBA is already expanding to multiple cities. So the earliest date that the WNBA has currently said they would look for an additional expansion beyond what's already been promised to Cleveland and Detroit would be 2032. Whereas the Connecticut Sun are looking to move right away. And a former minority owner of the Celtics has put in a very generous bid to purchase the team and relocate them. Also, someone in Houston is apparently preparing a bid, and it's also the person who owns the Houston Rockets. The WNBA prefers to have NBA owners also owning the WNBA team. So that's a potential Houston advantage from the WNBA perspective. So those are the issues. Relocation seems like it would be the quickest, but there's nothing inherently stopping.
You're a major sports fan. Stay up late at night. Didn't we keep some operating hours so that you could watch games? That's right.
So yes, those are in fact some of the issues that you've described. What I will say is that the owners of the Connecticut Sun really wanted to sell to Boston, but I believe the WNBA commissioner or whichever new organization, they're concerned about the idea that Boston wasn't playing it right, wasn't there, and that we would be leaping over these other cities. And I think it's important to us to show that there is support for a team here.
And from the league's perspective, they get money every time there's an expansion fee.
Yeah.
Relocation, the league doesn't make any money.
This is true, but I would point out to the league that it would be, we've already seen twice that a WNBA game has sold out TD Garden. You know, if the league is concerned about money, Boston market for a sports team is where you want to be.
Michael.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if you've either reached out or contacted the Brookline Commission for Women to see if they are going to hold a public hearing. And I haven't heard anything from them.
Actually, yes, I emailed the chair of the Brookline Commission for Women, and who has expressed an interest in possibly discussing this at a meeting and perhaps making a public hearing and attempting to endorse it. But all we've had is one email from me to her and an email back from her to me. So I don't know where that currently stands.
Are there any issues related to whether, we as a governmental body should be putting in recommendations to these private businesses? I can't think of any, but just wanted to throw that out.
I think it would
No?
be beneficial to our economy, right? I mean, if I think it would help us actually. So.
Okay.
Fill all those hotels.
Yeah,
Yes.
no problem with us supporting the billionaires. Okay, we usually don't vote.
It's also a public hearing.
I'm sorry, public hearing. We usually don't vote during the public hearing or at the public hearing, but let's hold the public hearing and see what the select board wants to do.
Okay, now that the chair has opened the public hearing, there are no individuals who signed up in advance. If someone online wishes to speak during this public hearing on warrant Article 16 related to women's basketball, please raise your hand using the raise the hand feature at this time. Okay, there are 11 individuals in the room, online, and no one else in the room, and no one else is indicating their desire to speak. Sorry, I'm starting to stumble over words.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing. What's the board's feeling about this? You want to vote now, or do you want to wait like we usually do? John?
Well, I'd like to vote now, and beyond that, I'd like to suggest maybe we should adopt as a regular practice, unless there is an objection, going ahead and voting. I mean, there's certain a number of resolutions on the warrant that they're just going to make our agendas longer and add more time, and I think unnecessarily. I don't think we need to take another meeting to have our.
Well,
vote on.
we usually distinguish between the minor resolutions and things that won't be controversial that we can vote on immediately, and those that do require a period of time for us to digest comments and give. some thought.
And I don't want it to, by no means minimize that this is actually a big subject that's going to be of intense interest to a lot of people. I just don't think there's going to be too many people raising objections to it. And and if we do hear from some, we can always go back to our
Reconsider.
later in the process. So
Michael?
Being new to this part of the process, I will ask, one of the reasons why I brought up the Brookline Commission for Women is to understand sort of what other perspectives we might bring. And to your point, John, I agree with you on the agenda, and I agree with you that we are generally in favor. So going ahead and voting isn't a problem. I'm just wondering whether our process would be better served by taking their recommendation in first before voting, or incorporating it in, or if there are other, if this is an EDAB question, or if there are other boards and commissions that we should also be incorporating into our thinking before taking a vote.
Well,
Not necessarily, but just.
So any changes so let's say that they wanted to make an amendment, like I just suggested, by the way, don't do it, or whatever, I don't think we're going to do it, but, we would always have to adjudicate that.
Right.
Because we don't have multiple, unless we feel really strongly that we want our version to go to town meeting. It would come back to us anyway, Michael, and we'd have to, kind of adjudicate that and figure out getting down to one version. So I mean, I'm comfortable voting tonight. I mean, for a couple of reasons. One, it would be great to get the message out sooner rather than later that Brookline supports it, for all the reasons that Michael mentioned, but I think it's good for our economy. I think it fills the hotel rooms. If we could get a franchise in Boston, it would be good for Brookline. So.
Okay, well, let's vote then. Although I think that Michael's concern is very important, very legitimate, but it's not.
We
gonna-
can work.
Yeah. So I move favorable action on warrant article 16, resolution to encourage bringing a professional women's basketball franchise to Boston. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Aye.
Michael Rubenstein.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you.
Can I
Thank
ask a
you.
quick question, just
Sure.
to make sure? Did we vote his language or did we
You
tweak it?
voted his language straight.
Okay, all right, very good.
You can always, again, you
Yeah.
can always move to reconsider.
Nope, I just wanted to make sure what I voted.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Michael.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, continued discussion. We did, we held a hearing on warrant article 10 last time, if I recall.
Yep.
So this is to bring up warrant article 10 for a vote, name the baseball diamond located at the northwest corner of Brookline's Warren Field to Campagna Diamond after Joseph Campagna. Any questions or further discussion on this? And I move approval, favorable action on warrant article 10 with respect to the Campagna Diamond baseball field. All in favor? John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Aye.
Michael Rubenstein.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay, we don't have anything else on the agenda?
Can I actually make a
Oh.
comment real quick about boards and commissions? In response to your earlier question, John, because I did get the answer. I apologize. I usually have that exact answer ready for every single one. I just didn't this time. But so on the Brookline Commission for Women, there are 11 total members. There's one vacancy and Melissa is the sole applicant at this time.
And have we been in touch with the chair?
Yes.
Okay.
The chair actually invited Melissa to the meeting, which is the meeting Melissa attended,
Okay.
and is supportive of the application.
Okay, great. Anyone want to make comments at the end of our meeting?
Are there any other individuals online who wish to make a public comment? Okay, it looks like not.
Okay, in that case, I will end the meeting. Thank you.